Today, we're going to be taking a look at some of the biggest twists in FNAF fan game history. From shocking reveals to moments that completely change how you see the story, these games know exactly how to catch players off guard. Some of these twists are so good that they're still talked about years after the game's first released, so let's dive into them. What is your favorite Roblox game? Don't answer that. I don't want to see any comments saying Forsaken, that game is terrible. Let me be more specific. What is your favorite Roblox FNAF game? Maybe you say FNAF 2 Reimagined. Maybe you say dog watching. Well, I personally have found a new FNAF Roblox series that we could add to the conversation. Today, we'll be talking about Five Nights at Marcus, a series many of you may have never heard about. However, with 3 games being in the series, I'm willing to bet you've heard of the third. It's just a little game that goes by the name of Far From Land. Yeah. That's something even I didn't know about until starting to do work for this video. This series tries a lot of interesting things and succeeds and fails at a lot of them. Today, I'll be going over each of those things, so join me as we dive into the world of Five Nights at Marcus. And with Five Nights at Marcus, we obviously start with the first one, and night 1 of game 1. And with night 1 on the way, we bust a nut into our office and can start learning about everything important that we need to learn. To start, let's just talk about our office itself. Obviously, we have our monitors for our cameras in front of us, but we also have a picture of a cat named Oscar on our desk, and I think that's great. Also, if you open the drawer on your desk, you'll see another picture of Oscar. Just lovely. Looking up, we see a big vent, but we'll focus on that later. Turning around, we'll see the door to our office, which cannot be closed, which is a bit concerning just knowing the type of game we're playing right now. And behind us is also a maintenance panel, which we will be using to complete the night. How do we do that, you ask? Great question. On this maintenance panel, you will see several tasks we have to complete. That's right, Five Nights at Marcus uses a task-based completion system rather than a time-based one, which can be a blessing and a curse in some instances. The tasks are mind-numbing. Just press a button and wait for it to load 5 times and the night is over. But what about the threat this night introduces? That would seemingly be Marcus himself. You can find him on the cameras just laying on the fucking floor. He has no legs, so we can all laugh at him for being crippled. Where's your life alert, buddy, huh? Get up! Marcus will try to get to the door behind you. However, Marcus makes no sound cues, and because he has no legs, is not visible at the door or window either. So, how are you supposed to know when he's actually arrived? Another great question. Guys, you guys are on a roll today. The answer is pretty simple. You really have to make sure you're watching him on the cameras, and once you see him leave camera 1, you'll know he's at your door. But Dexter, how are you supposed to keep him away? Oh my goodness, another amazing question. You're doing so well. Inside of your maintenance panel, along with your tasks menu, you also have a shock menu. Go to the shock menu and use the shock when Marcus is outside of your door and he'll scream like a bitch and run away. And then his cycle will continue. Night 1 is piss easy since Marcus barely moves, but don't worry, this is going to get much more complicated as we go. So let's move on to night 2. Night 2 rolls around and we have one new threat to talk about. And for some reason, I'm not gonna lie to you, this night serves to show me how stressful this game is about to become. Let's talk about it. The new threat on this night, not gonna lie, I don't know the name of him, so I'm just gonna call him Green Man. Green Man attacks in the same way as Marcus, except noticing him is a lot easier. When he gets to your office, he has 2 phases. One outside of your window, and one where he's standing in the fucking doorway. Which I can't lie, scared the shit out of me the first time I saw it. Oh. What's that? I didn't like that. No, I fucking didn't. What the fuck was that about? Which you can see in my full playthrough over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. Exact same thing as Marcus here. Whenever you see him in your hallway or at your door, shock his ass and he'll reset. Now, if you remember about 24 seconds ago, you'll notice I said that this night is stressful. You might be wondering how that's even possible considering there's only 2 threats and they both do the exact same thing. Well, my reasoning for this surrounds Marcus and the fact you have to watch him so closely on the cameras. Marcus moves incredibly quickly, it seems. Like, way faster than I would have ever expected for a Night 2 character to move. I was expecting to be able to do my tasks in bursts of 50% before checking on him, but that got me killed very quickly. We gotta get this thing to 100 before we go check on him, though. That's my goal. We gotta get you to 100, bro. Perfect. Fuck me in my ass. Okay, well, I didn't expect you to be that quick. He was a quick guy. Then I decided to do them in bursts of 25%, and that was working up until the point in the night where Green Man starts moving. Then I had to start doing my tasks in bursts of 10%, and even that felt like I was cutting it down to the wire with time management. And now, here's the really weird part. Throughout the first half of the night, Marcus was moving at the speed of sound. The moment Green Man activates, Marcus sits in his final camera for the rest of the night without moving. And this is so stressful for exactly the reason you think it is. With Marcus in his last camera, it only takes him one more movement opportunity to reach the office, which means I'm on edge the whole night, constantly checking to make sure he doesn't move. Because he's been stationary for so long, I'm thinking, there's no way he's not gonna move. He's going to anytime now, except nope. He never fucking moved. Just sitting there like a dick, scaring the shit out of me. Whatever. On to night 3. With night 3 coming along, so does another threat we get to talk about. And in all honesty, this threat doesn't make the game much harder, but Marcus 100% does. The threat introduced on this night is once again someone I don't know the name of, so I'm going to be calling him Vent Guy. And I'm guessing purely by saying his name, you can already guess what this guy is going to do. That's right, the exact same thing as Marcus. No, I'm not kidding. Vent Guy will attack your vents, and he actually has 2 different means of attacking you. The first will have him do exactly what Green Man does. He'll go through vent 1 and show up outside of your office. When he does, all you have to do is go to the shock menu on your maintenance panel and shock the vent. His second form of attack will have him attack the vent directly above your head, or vent 2. When you see him in this vent, for some reason, you don't shock the vent. This time around, you have to give him the Withered Foxy treatment and flash your light at him several times to make him go away. Turns out he's epileptic, and there's nothing I enjoy more than giving epileptic people seizures. Also, quick side tangent, I feel like it'd be hard to drive with epilepsy. And who knows, maybe you can't. There have been times where I'm driving on the highway, and on the sides of the road they have the little bumper things to prevent people from flying off the road, but these little bumper things have several support beams holding them in the ground, so when you're driving during the sunset, oftentimes the sun will line up with those fucking support beams and proceed to strobe me for the next 6 miles on the fucking road. Anyways, let's keep talking about the Five Nights at Freddy's game, shall we? Again, Vent Guy isn't really that big of an issue. Who is a fucking issue, however, is Marcus. At first, I thought Marcus was moving at the speed of fucking sound because there would be several, and I do mean several instances where I noticed Marcus leaves camera 1, so I shocked the hallway. Then moments later, I get killed by Marcus. At first, I thought this meant Marcus turned into a fucking bullet train, but no. I think I understand what's happening here. I'm pretty sure there's a window of time between Marcus leaving camera 1 and actually showing up outside of your office. And I think I was shocking the hallway during that window of time, which meant when Marcus actually did get to my hallway, I was never actually able to shock him, and I obviously couldn't see him on the cameras. I think this is a very, very bad mechanic. If this is truly how Marcus works, if Marcus can't be seen when he's in the hallway, and he makes no sound cues to indicate he's entered the hallway, and you have a window of time between him disappearing off of all of the cameras and reaching the hallway, and your shock cooldown is very long, this brings up a very obvious problem of literally never being able to time Marcus properly and consistently. What needs to happen is when Marcus leaves camera 1, that means he is instantly in your hallway. What ended up happening constantly during my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, is I would see Marcus leave camera 1, so I'd shock the hallway. Then I'd check camera 4 to see if he'd been reset. When I saw he hadn't, I'd rush back to the maintenance panel and spam the shock button, which was always still charging at this point. Shock the hallway a second time, and only then would I see that Marcus would reset. This is very bad. One of the only flaws I've noticed with this game so far. This is not fun. This is not challenging. This is not innovative. This is just bad game design. And if the devs are looking for anything to change about this game, this is 100% the thing to change. But with that, we can move on to night 4. All right, recording Dxtr here. Giving a little note as I'm reading this script and remembering that I wrote this. Marcus, I was told that Marcus, after he is in camera 1 and he disappears, he doesn't go to the hallway. He actually goes to camera 3 after camera 1. However, thinking about that doesn't make sense because quite literally, every time I shocked the hallway and then shocked it a second time, Marcus was reset. So you're telling me that if that's true, what I just said right now, that he goes to camera 3 after camera 1, camera 3 is his final camera, you're telling me that every single feasible time Marcus left camera 1 and I shocked twice, he made a movement opportunity to camera 3 and then my hallway. He made that every time in that window of time without fail. I don't believe that. I have trouble believing that. I think what I wrote originally is correct, but I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Night 4 rolls around, and with it, another threat is introduced. Once again, the name of this character is currently unknown to me, so I'm going to be calling him Screen Guy. Obviously, as I'm sure you could have already seen, there are 6 screens on our desk, and so far we've only ever used one of them. Well, Screen Guy is here to change that. Throughout the night, at random, he has a chance to appear on any of the non-camera screens. He'll make a subtle sound cue when he appears, and all you have to do is click the monitor he occupies and he'll go away. Incredibly basic character, not really much to worry about. Something about this night I want to mention is 2 things that I learned. The first being that Green Man's name is Shut. I personally prefer Green Man if I'm being honest. The second thing I learned while playing Night 4 is that as long as your maintenance panel is down, no matter which of the 2 screens you have selected, you will still do your task. Okay, let's just pump this up to 40. And now we'll shock. Oh, wait, it's still going. Well, isn't that just the best thing you've ever seen in your life? I didn't know it was gonna do all that now. Which means if I notice Marcus has left, now that I know I basically have to shock him twice to properly time it, I can start on my task, flip to the shock panel, and while I take a billion years shocking him twice, the task I selected will still be performed the entire time. I'm sure this was probably obvious to most people, but shut up, I just figured it out now. Anyways, on to Night 5, since there wasn't a whole lot to go over this time. Once again, Night 5 introduces nothing new and just goes about being a harder version of Night 4. While a little boring, there's nothing wrong with that. It is the first game in the series after all. However, there is something interesting to talk about. But before I talk about it, I want to mention the names of the characters I've failed to mention so far. Vent Guy's name is officially Dahomey. Yes, I'm serious. What a silly name. I personally prefer Vent Guy, I'm not gonna lie. And then the weird monitor guy's name is officially Shadow Marcus, which, by the way, I didn't mention this. If you ever don't click his monitor in time, he'll just appear behind you and disable your maintenance panel, ensuring that you will die. Anyways, on to that interesting thing I mentioned about 20 seconds ago. After completing Night 5, the game doesn't just end like I expected it to. Instead, we get this cutscene. But there we go. After completing Night 5, we get a sneak peek at possibly our antagonist, and Five Nights at Marcus comes to a close. But that's not before we're able to go into the extras menu and read a little bit about the characters. We see that Marcus was never finished being built, which is obviously why he has no legs. Shut was originally designed to be so tall for intimidation, as he was going to be a security robot, but he soon turned hostile. Dahomey goes into your vents because he's so small, and he was the last robot made before the company had to hand over all of their robots for investigation, which I find interesting because they're not being investigated in this game. They're just sitting in a building. And finally, the company has given no word as to what Shadow Marcus even is, so yeah, that doesn't sound weird and suspicious at all. So yeah, that's all Five Nights at Marcus has to offer. But of course, judging by the length of this video, you guys know we've got a lot more to talk about. And that's because this series actually has 2 additional games packed full of content. So let's move on to Five Nights at Marcus 2. Five Nights at Marcus 2, while not a remaster, don't let that fool you, as while graphically it may not look as good as the first game, mechanic-wise, I think it is pretty solid. And this game is much more stressful than the first. So let's get right into Night 1, because just like in the first game, there's no weird minigames. Night 1 drops us right into the office and really shows us how much more challenging this game is going to be. To start, let's talk about the tools at our disposal. Of course, we have our camera system, nothing special, and just like the last game, we're able to turn around to do our tasks. But we'll talk about what those tasks are in a bit because they are much more interesting than the first. Sticking to the front of our office, we have a flashlight that we can use to flash the large window in front of us. You'll notice there's 3 separate areas of this window you can flash. You'll also notice that this flashlight drains incredibly quickly, like really fast. So what do we do about that? While looking at the front of the office, you can flip down your maintenance panel in order to repair things or shock things. If your flashlight goes dead, simply repair it and it'll fill right back up. Nothing crazy. Now, let's move on to talking about the task-based system this game has, and why it's much more stressful than the first. To start, this time around, we're not just pressing a button and playing the waiting game. This time, it's actually something we have to pay attention to. We will receive several shipping containers throughout the night. When they arrive, we must scan them, which takes a while, and when they're scanned, we'll get some information about them on the left side of the screen. The information predetermined on the right side of the screen is what should be inside of the shipping container. If both sides match, we accept it. If they don't, we deny it. Every time we do this successfully, we gain a point, and if we fuck up 5 times, we lose. Fucking up is pretty hard, but once these nights start to get more and more stressful, it will become apparent how messing this up could be easy. Do this 12 times and the night is complete. But of course, we all know it's not just that simple, as of course we do have other threats to deal with at the same time. Just like in the first game, Marcus himself is the only character introduced on night 1, and he is very simple. Even more simple than in the first game. However, he does drain a precious resource far more than any other character does. Marcus will move through the cameras to get to your window. Luckily, this time you'll actually be able to see him when he's at it. And when he is, all you have to do is spam your flashlight at him and he'll reset. But of course, with the flashlight draining so quickly, dealing with Marcus is not something you're going to want to be doing very often, as repairing the flashlight can take a hefty amount of time when you really don't have it. Plus, we'll need to use that flashlight to deal with the other threats that get introduced later, but for now, Marcus is all we have, so beating this night should be easy and we can move on to night 2. Night 2 honestly does way more than I expected it to, and is where I learned that this game has quite a few more characters than the first. So let's not waste any time and talk about the first threat this night introduces, Shut. Returning from the first game like Marcus, Shut plays a role in introducing a very important mechanic into the game, that being your shock system. Inside of your maintenance panel where you repair your flashlight, you'll notice a shock button at the bottom. Switching to the shock screen, you'll see you can shock either the vent or the office. Shut will slowly make his way to your office, and fun fact, whenever a character reaches camera 5, which is the camera right before they show up in your window, they will actually make a sound cue as you'll be able to hear them walking, which is very nice. When Shut shows up at your window, shock your office and he'll go away, wherein you'll then have to wait for the office shock to recharge. Not so bad. Hopefully we just don't get a fuck ton more characters that also require us to shock the office. The next threat introduced on this night goes by the name of Him. Stupid name, I know, but let's just roll with it, alright? Him will make his way to your office and show up at your window. When he does, all you have to do is shock the office and he'll leave. Uh-oh. Something tells me this game is about to get super repetitive and mind-numbing and luck-based. But those are the only new threats this night introduces. But before we move on to night 3, there's one more mechanic I need to mention now that we've brought up shocking. You only have 5 shocks. When you run out, you'll need to repair your shock to refill it. You usually have plenty of time to do this at this point of the game, but I get the funny feeling it's going to get a lot more difficult as we progress. But with that out of the way, we can move on to night 3. Night 3 only adds one new threat, and the way the game made him sound made me think he was going to be interesting.
What are the animatronics? Take a shortcut through the vents to your office. Make sure you flash.
What? 17! But I was sorely mistaken. This night introduces Vent Boy again. I already forgot his name, and I don't feel like checking again because I remember that it was something really stupid. Vent Boy does pretty much the exact same thing that he does in the first game, yet they somehow managed to make him more boring. Vent Boy obviously travels through your vents. When he makes it to your window, you'll see him directly in front of you. Unlike the original, where you have to shock the vent, this time around, you just treat him like Marcus and flash him a bunch of times until he leaves. Very boring. I don't know why they didn't make him a vent shot character. That just makes sense. It's also at this point of the video where I want to mention a pretty glaring flaw that this game has, and I'm sure you might have already caught on. There is so far no reason to ever check your cameras throughout this game, and in fact, even the sound cues aren't necessary, as you could pretty easily beat what we've talked about so far with the game muted. Here's what the strategy boils down to right now. Start the night and immediately start working on tasks. Every time you send a container, turn around and very quickly flash the 3 sections of the window to waste as little flashlight power as possible. If you don't see anyone, do your next task. If you do see someone, deal with them. If it's a shock character, shock them and then repair your flashlight before turning around and working on the next container. The only time you won't repair your light here is if you need to repair your shock instead. Repeat this 17 times for night 3 and you have it completed. Is this night hard? No. Do all of the characters make you feel intimidated? No. Why? Because even though we have 4 characters active at this point, there are still only 2 mechanics to deal with all of them, as this game continues to dive into the FNAF 2 repetition problem. But let's hold out some hope and move on to night 4. Night 4 is nothing special. No, literally, quite literally nothing new is added on this night at all. And for some reason, during my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, I actually got attacked far less times than I did on night 3, which I thought was really weird. The only thing that actually changes on this night is how many cargo containers you have, which on this night was 18. Boring stuff. Let's move on to night 5 where something interesting actually does happen. Night 5 does something different, thankfully, that being introducing one new threat that actually really changes something about the gameplay loop, which this game 100% needed. This new character is Vent Boy 2.0, and I'm calling him that because, once again, I forgot his fucking name. Vent Boy 2.0 adds something from the first game that I wasn't a super huge fan of. As I'm sure you could have guessed by his name, he travels through the vents, except unlike Dahomey, he doesn't drop down in front of you for you to flash. He works exactly how Marcus does from the first game. He'll travel through your vent cameras. Once you see him disappear from them, you know he's about to attack. During this time, all you have to do is shock the vent and he'll reset. While not a hard mechanic by itself, it does hurt my dick that I actually have to try to beat this game now. Although it is good that at least now finally on night 5, we have a reason to use the camera. Too bad we only get one night with him, as night 5 is the final night Five Nights at Marcus 2 has to offer. However, we still have one last game to talk about, and it's not called Five Nights at Marcus 3. I actually didn't even know that the next game we'll be talking about was even a part of this series, that game in question being Far From Land. So let's jump right into that. Far From Land starts in a very interesting way. Unlike both of the Five Nights at Marcus games, Far From Land actually has something other than just night sections, as this game opens to a cutscene about cargo ships that work for Celadon, and go figure, we play as the person driving this cargo ship. And oddly enough, we're referred to as Marcus by the phone guy. Hey, recording Dxtr once again. No, we fucking aren't. We're not called Marcus. I don't know why I fucking wrote that. We're called Malcolm. Guess I'm retarded. Anyways, let's continue. Speaking of the phone guy, he's nothing special on our first voyage in the game. He tells us how to deal with problems, blah, blah, blah. Let me do that for you guys. To start, once again, like the other games, Far From Land is a task-based completion system, which I really like. And this game's task is by far the most interesting and engaging so far. We have to literally just drive the fucking ship. That's the task. While we're piloting the ship, we will be able to see several icebergs in front of us. We will have to steer the ship away from these to avoid crashes. And once we reach a certain point, which is marked on a monitor in front of us, the voyage will be complete. Of course, it's not just as easy as that. We also have a maintenance room to keep track of. The ship we're on is very old and is prone to breaking down. We can check the ship's integrity with one of our monitors, and once it gets too low, the ship will stop moving and sirens will start to blare. At this time, we must go back to the maintenance room and fix one of a few busted pipes at random. Don't worry about the massive scary vent in front of us. We'll talk about that later. The only other thing for us to talk about on this night is the one threat this game introduces. I'm assuming this character is Shut, just given the fact how large this character really is. On one of our monitors in front of us, we can see a layout of the ship. Unlike every other game so far, we can't actually check the cameras, which is really a good thing since the last 2 games really didn't have any reason to. Every time a character moves, we will get a signal on this monitor to show us exactly where they are. Obviously, Shut is the only character active on this night, so he's all we have to talk about. Shut, being the most basic of the characters, does the most basic thing. He will wander around the ship until he reaches the hallway directly behind you. You'll be able to hear him when he arrives. Turning around will show him inside of the hallway, but you don't have to do anything at this point. The next time Shut moves, he will be right up next to you, so you need to make sure you're facing the hallway when this happens. As he walks up to you, you'll need to hold your breath so he thinks you're not alive or something. He'll check you out, make sure you're a robot or something, and then he'll turn around and leave, and you can go back to driving the ship. Very simple character, but I do think him getting so close to you is super cool. But that's all the first voyage has to offer. But good news for us, in this game, there's actually something to do after each night instead of just moving on to the next. We have the first post-voyage section where we need to fix up our old bum-ass ship. During this section, we're in an area that's dark as fuck. We're equipped with a flashlight and a checklist. We'll have to find several jerry cans around the map, fix several pipes, shut off the power, and find and replace the fuse of the ship's generator. Then this night will truly be over. Of course, it's not just as simple as that, as there is a threat lurking around. Do I know the name of this character? Just like most other characters introduced in this series, no. But I'm sure I'll find out the more that I play. For now, I'm going to call this character the Puppet because its drawing kinda looks like a discount marionette. The puppet will randomly wander around the ship as we're doing our tasks. This place is dark as fuck, and using our flashlight is essential. Every time we move to a new location, we'll have to pause and listen for the puppet's breathing. Even though it's a fucking robot, it still is loud. When we hear it, we must hold our breath until it leaves, wherein we can then continue our tasks. Very simple overall, but I do think it's really cool they're adding something to do after the main night sections. With that, we can move on to Voyage 2. Voyage 2 is much the same as the first. We've got a slightly longer distance to go and a new threat to talk about. This one being a lot scarier than the last. I want you to take a solid guess whether or not I know the name of this character. Do you think I do? What's that? You think I know the name of this character? Well, you haven't been watching this video then because I have no fucking idea what this thing is called, so I'm gonna be calling him Water Guy. Hey, recording Dxtr here, once again, I'm back. Apparently this is fucking Marcus. Does it look like Marcus? No, but it's Marcus. Water Guy uses a mechanic that has to do with water, if you couldn't have guessed based on how I named him. One of the monitors on the panel in front of us shows off our water integrity. This is basically just explaining how much water the ship is currently storing. Pulling the lever next to it will increase how much water is stored if it ever decreases. But that brings up the question of how it decreases. Well, that's where Water Guy comes into play. Just like Shut, he will make his way to where we are. However, he uses a different entrance. If you turn to where Shut attacks and then turn left, you'll see a new door. This door has no light and there's no way to see into the doorway. I'm sure you can see where this might be going. And you'd be right. You will not be able to see Water Guy when he's in the door. And with no cameras, how are you supposed to track him? Well, that's where that trusty motion detector comes into play. When you see that he's near the entrance, quickly whip around to that doorway and pull a yellow lever that releases a sprinkler system into the doorway for some reason. Not really sure why this is here, but it is. When you do, you'll see Water Guy spark, since you know he's a robot and they don't really fuck with water and such, and then he'll reset. Nothing crazy, but he is for sure going to be one of the more annoying threats throughout this playthrough. So now, let's move on to the post-Voyage 2 section. Not even really sure why I'm talking about this section. It's the exact same as the last one, except the objects are placed randomly somewhere else, and it seems that whatever monster is down here is more aggressive. Overall, super simple. It's time to move on to Voyage 3. Voyage 3 is longer than Voyage 2. This is going to be a pattern that repeats itself. Also offered on this voyage is yet another threat for us to worry about, that being Dahomey. A character I surprisingly remembered the name of, but that's only because it's so fucking stupid. Dahomey, like he is in the other games, is a vent character. And where is the only vent on the ship we can access? That's right, the maintenance room. Luckily, we can track him on the motion detector like the other characters, and when we see him in the vent, all we have to do is whip over to it and hold our flashlight on him until he goes away. Very easy, but it is another character to drag us away from the task that continues to get longer and longer each night, but that's all this voyage adds. Moving on to the post-voyage section, which is actually something different this time. Instead of inspecting the top deck, this time we're inspecting the bottom deck. In it, we have another plethora of tasks, such as fixing leaky pipes, replacing fire extinguishers, rearranging pipes, and finally refueling the ship. All of these tasks are pretty simple. However, there is one threat looming over our heads, quite literally the entire time. That being the puppet-looking thing again. Hey, recording Dxtr again. This is a different fucking puppet. I don't know its name, but it's a different one. Occasionally, while we're walking around the lower deck, he'll drop down from a vent in the ceiling. Using a wrench we acquire on this night to complete our tasks, we have to whack the shit out of him to make him jump back into the vents. We only have a certain amount of stamina, and since we need to swing the wrench to fix leaky pipes, we have to balance how much we're swinging at once. Once we get into the final room, all we do is refuel the ship and we're ready to move on to the next voyage. However, before we do that, I want to talk about something stupid that this game has. Quite a few months back, I was actually playing this game on my second channel, Dxtr Black, but I stopped on episode 3 because this post-voyage section of the game was bugged. I said I'd come back to the game after it was fixed. What would happen is that the game would literally just freeze when doing certain things, and I was even able to still replicate it now, which happened in my newest playthrough of the game. What? See, look, I already broke the game. Turns out this bug is all tied to the FPS of the game. If you use the highest FPS to 40 like I do, not only can this bug occur, but it will also fuck up your camera movement 6 ways to Sunday, making you whip around so fast it gives you whiplash. This is the same problem I was having all those months ago. So, if you turn your FPS down to 60, not only will it fix the whole whiplash problem for some reason, it will also completely fix the freezing bug I had. I have no idea whatsoever how FPS has to play into any of this, and this is not the first game I've played with this weird problem. Weirdly enough, the Poppy Playtime games also have bugs on higher frame rates as well, the main one being that the grab pack will pull you upwards far fucking slower on higher FPS. Super weird, but I needed to point it out. On to voyage number 4, which is entirely new territory for me once again, and with this voyage comes one of the scariest threats yet. Lore-wise, not really gameplay-wise, I'm gonna be honest with you. During the phone call, it gets intercepted by a guy named Mason. I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to know who Mason is at this time, but I'm gonna be so honest, I have no idea who the fuck Mason is, and I really can't be fucked to figure it out. Mason talks about how this new threat, who he calls the Kraken, has gotten on the ship and that it's very dangerous. Apparently, this robot is what the company doesn't want anyone knowing about, and we're completely alone on this massive ship with it. The Kraken's mechanic is pretty interesting, but I think it could have been done a lot better. The Kraken can be seen on the front of the ship through your window while you're driving. By holding shift, you can cause the horn of the ship to go off. Whenever you see the Kraken, blow the horn like the hose do and he'll go away. When your horn integrity runs out, all you have to do is go to the maintenance room and fix a pipe, which will then fix your horn. I don't really know how that makes any sense, but don't question it. That's just what we have to do. The Kraken does have another mechanic, although I personally never saw it. The Kraken has a chance to enter your maintenance room. If you ever see him in there, just turn around and that's literally it. Hey, recording Dxtr again. This isn't the Kraken that does this in the maintenance room. It's another fucking character I don't know the name of, but yeah, no, he was just never mentioned by a phone guy. It's just fucked me, I guess. Overall, I think the Kraken could be a cool mechanic. He kind of hides like he knows you're looking for him, but he always hides in the same spot. I think it would be a lot cooler and a lot more interesting if the Kraken had several hiding spots throughout the front of the ship that he'd hide in at random. Doing this would not only make the gameplay loop more interesting, but also keep the player on their toes throughout the entire voyage. Now, moving on to the post-voyage section. Spoiler alert, it's exactly the same as the last one. Doing the same tasks, albeit one of the puzzles is different, but still very simple, and the puppet thing is still trying to turn our guts into soup. Refill the tank at the end of this section of the voyage, and it is over, and we can move on to the 5th voyage. Voyage 5 adds nothing new to the gameplay loop, just being a harder version of Voyage 4, and a lot harder, that is. The characters really ramp up their AI on this night and get a lot more aggressive, which is an oddly nice change of pace. What really gets interesting is this post-voyage cutscene.
Why are you doing this? You think you can just take us away and destroy us and leave no trace of us left? I don't want that. I don't want that to happen. You have made a mistake doing this, and you know that. Malcolm, I know everything about you. You are just like everyone else I've killed. Wait, maybe I know why you are even here to begin with. Isn't it because of your brother? I know you're hurt, and I know you want to take revenge. But you know deep down that you'll never defeat me. Never come back here. Never tell anyone about this. Or else, you will have to face me.
And with that, we're surprisingly thrown into a sixth voyage. A sixth night is something that none of the other games have had so far, so this actually makes me very surprised. And turns out this final voyage is a boss fight with the Kraken, which is the name of the robot we just saw in the cutscene, not actually the robot I was calling the Kraken earlier. I'm sure you could have guessed from this whole video, but I don't think the series is very good at explaining names. The Kraken obviously plays the role of all of the characters we've seen on the voyages so far, with a small twist when he plays as Shut and Dahomey. In both cases, when dealing with him, he activates a rat from Five Nights at Candy's 3 mechanic, where you have to track his head while he moves around. Awesome change of pace. I love that they added this little extra piece of detail, really ties everything together. The dude that sits outside of your front window, and Scrap, which is the name of the character that I thought was the Kraken that sat in your maintenance room, had a chance to do it, and you turn around, it's that guy, his name is Scrap. I found this out only because of the fucking settings at the end of the game, because they never say his fucking name in the game. It's just stupid as fuck. But that's really it. Deal with all of the characters and try to avoid the fact that the Kraken killed a guy and attached his rib cage and head to his own fucked up robot body. Yeah, tell me that's not the most fucked up shit you've ever heard in your life. After completing the voyage, we get one last cutscene where we seemingly willingly drive the ship right into a giant rock to sink the entire thing and destroy ourselves, along with the murder robots that are inside of it. Honestly, a very good decision in my opinion. Really taking one for the team there, Malcolm. I appreciate it, G. But with that, everything is destroyed. We unlock the extras where I learned Dahomey wasn't even Dahomey the entire time I've been calling him the wrong fucking name, and that there are like 7 human characters that have a paragraph of text beneath them, all characters I'm supposed to be familiar with. Spoiler alert, I am not, so I'm just gonna pretend like I never opened the extras menu, and I'll just say that Five Nights at Marcus series comes to a close. Overall, I really think that this is a great series. I think it started off pretty rocky, but overall it's clear you can see a real improvement from one game to another, especially with how amazing Far From Land is. Even though it has one of the stupidest bugs I've ever seen. I just really hate how lore-wise, I literally picked up none of it. Literally 0 pieces throughout my whole playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. Well, let me know what you think. Do you agree with me? Or do you think this game series is just the worst of the worst slop? Let me know in the comments below. In my Fazbear Tomb video, I asked you guys what smaller FNAF fan games you'd like to see me cover in a video where I go over multiple in one video. And my favorite answer was, I don't fucking know, because I couldn't find a comment that actually answered the question, so thanks guys. I've covered several overwhelming FNAF games on my channel before, and I'm sure I'll cover many more in the future. Today is no different. I've recently stumbled across a fan game dev by the name of Solar Neon, responsible for Late Shift at Nintendo World, which is in a video I've made recently with a very good song along with it. Well, call me surprised when I found out that Solar has actually been working on an entire series of FNAF games, and that 2 of the 6 of them have already been released. Knowing that, I couldn't help myself but get sucked right in, and now I'm going to force you to be sucked in as well. Today, we're going to be talking about Swing Shift at Farley's, a FNAF fan game with some of the darkest and most sinister storytelling I've ever seen. Before we start talking about the actual gameplay loop this game has to offer, I first want to talk about the stylistic choices of this game. Something I noticed is that Swing Shift at Farley's really feels like FNAF 1. A lot of games try to replicate the style and feel of FNAF 1, but I honestly don't think many are capable of doing it. Farley's is definitely one of them. The overall look and feel of the game really reminds me of the original Five Nights at Freddy's, which makes the game feel nostalgic. I love it. Anyways, moving on to talking about Night 1. There is plenty to talk about. Look at the length of the video. Again, the person that made this game also made Late Shift at Nintendo World, so you know we're about to see some of the most creative shit you've ever seen in your entire life. To start, there are a lot of places you're able to move, but before we go down the list talking about them, describing the doors is very important. Swing Shift at Farley's doesn't use a typical power system, which I love. It makes my dick not feel like it's on fire. However, the doors do have their own type of power system involved. When a door is closed, the door's fuse will quickly decrease. If it empties completely, then obviously the door will be forced open. So that bodes the question, what the fuck are we going to do about that? Very epic answer, I will say, and this brings up probably my favorite mechanic. As I said, there are multiple rooms you can go to from the office. Turning to the left door, you can turn once more and go to some weird back room area. I think this is a hallway. Then, turning once more, you can go to a storage room. Inside of this storage room, you can grab a new fuse. But of course, it's not just as simple as grabbing the fuse, as there is a minigame you have to complete first. A bar will appear at the bottom of your screen and an arrow will slide back and forth. You have to time and click when the arrow is in the middle of the bar 3 times in a row for you to be able to pull out the fuse. I guess we have to really put our backs into picking up this fuse that probably weighs as much as all of the food in your mom's fridge combined. Get it? Because a fuse is very light and your mom's fridge is empty because she ate it all? Yeah, you got it. Directly behind you while looking at the camera monitor is where your fuse box is located. You can remove an empty fuse and replace it with a new one you grabbed. However, the fuse has to be empty before you can replace it. So this will lead to you having to forcefully make your door run out of power at times. But that will make more sense once we start talking about the actual threats this night introduces. Speaking of which, let's do that now. Night 1 only introduces 2 threats. However, they both go on to serve a very important purpose. So let's talk about Basil first. Basil is this weird fucking dog thing. His goal is to attack your left door. He will make his way through the cameras and eventually make it to your door. However, something interesting you'll notice about Basil and your hallways for that matter is that they have no lights. So you won't actually be able to see Basil at your door, nor does he make a sound cue informing you he's there. So that poses the question, how are you supposed to know he's there? Something about Basil, and every animatronic in this game, is that unlike characters from some other FNAF games, they will never move backwards. So once Basil gets to his final camera before attacking, once he leaves that camera, you know for a fact he's at your door and you need to close it. This leads to you needing to constantly watch the cameras to track the characters, something I've noticed a lot of other FNAF games are unable to do without adding a music box or finding them on the cameras mechanic. See, fellow game devs, this game is proof that you can find an interesting way to use the cameras that isn't those 2 things. Basil will bang on the door when he leaves so you can open it again. In general, 1 fuse usually lasts about 2 attacks from characters before you should let it run out and replace it. Charlie is the next character introduced, and she does literally the exact same thing as Basil, except she attacks your right door. Not much more to say about her. Night 2 introduces 2 new threats, each of them doing something different, adding a lot more stress to this game. It's during this night I noticed just how hard this game was truly going to get throughout the later nights. Because even just on night 2, you're already getting dogpiled, and the reflexes and balancing skills you'll need drastically increase. The first and most recognizable threat added is Florence. He is the Foxy equivalent of this game. He is in fucking jail. No, I'm not kidding. He's literally behind bars. Throughout the night, he'll make his way through several phases before bum rushing your office like your mom bum rushed the cafeteria in her school years, canonically revealing that she's had this terrible eating habit all her life. Of course, watching him on the cameras will slow him down, but with several other characters that will require you to also constantly be watching them, it's safe to say that you won't be stalling him nearly as much as you can stall Foxy, as you do actually have to be looking at him. Unlike Foxy, Florence can attack whichever door he wants. And also, as far as I'm aware, there's no way to force his attack to happen earlier. With Foxy, you could check the left hall, but there doesn't appear to be an equivalent for Florence. What you'll have to do is listen to hear which side his footsteps come on and close the respective door. This brings up a synergy with Basil and Charlie. As I said earlier, each fuse has enough power to block 2 attacks, maybe 3 if you cut it really close, which I wouldn't recommend. So having Florence attack a door that only has 1 attack left, and then noticing that Basil or Charlie is about to attack that door will really get your blood pressure to rise as you quickly whip around to do that quick time event minigame to get a new fuse. I love love the stress this character brings, I can't lie. The final threat this night introduces is Dominic. He brings on an entire new mechanic into this game. In your office, you'll now see that you're able to look up. Doing so, you'll find a vent. Hooray! I can't wait to see what this asshole is about to do. Dominic appears in the same camera as Florence. When he decides he's going to try to get to you, he will move to the back room. On this back room camera, you will see a new pop-up at the bottom. It's a heater for the vent. I'm sure you can see where this is going. When Dominic leaves this backroom camera, it means he has just entered your vent. However, that doesn't mean you should blast the vent just yet, as after you use the heater, you'll have to wait for it to cool down. And just because Dominic is in your vents doesn't mean he'll be combated by the heater just yet. This is the point in time where you'll need to constantly check the vent above you to see if you can hear him banging around inside of them. If you don't hear him, don't blast him. When you do hear the banging, this is when you should go to the camera, charge up the heater, and activate it. You do have to be looking at the vent to hear the banging, so don't think you can just avoid looking up, because unfortunately, you cannot. Night 3 is a doozy, adding one new threat that in turn adds one new mechanic, enough to make everyone's urethra begin to leak blood. So let's talk about her. The threat that Night 3 introduces is Whitney, and Whitney introduces your flashlight. I bet you can already guess what she's going to do. Whitney has 3 avenues she can attack you from: your left door, your right door, and the vent above you. She will wander around the cameras and eventually pick one to attack. When she is at one of those locations, you have to spam your flashlight at her until she goes away. However, something you may have wondered, and no, this flashlight does not work how most FNAF flashlights tend to, as this one is much worse. The rate at which the battery drains from this flashlight is a lunacy. So, to compensate, you're able to charge it back up. But how do you do this, you might ask? Well, on the cameras, you will see a new pop-up. Using this pop-up, you can slowly recharge your flashlight. The problem with this? Obviously, aside from the fact that it's just a fucking music box, which I hate, is that the camera in which this pop-up is on teleports to a random camera whenever it damn well pleases. Did you just fucking hear me? The music box mechanic, aka my second least favorite mechanic of all time, is a find them on the camera mechanic, aka my number 1 least favorite mechanic of all time. This fucking charging flashlight pop-up is the combination of my 2 least favorite things, and they happen at the same goddamn time. You can't make this shit up, bro. When I first saw this, my penis instantly wilted like a flower and died. Fuck me. And that's not even the end of it, as Whitney behaves in the same way as Charlie and Basil. There is no sound cue for when she arrives at any of the 3 places she can arrive, and you also can't tell if she's there without flashing your light, which I've already explained drains way too quickly for you to just be flashing it all willy-nilly. So you have to track her exactly how you have to track Charlie and Basil. There's not even a crazy amount of characters, yet this is quickly becoming one of the most stressful FNAF games I've ever played. And don't even get me started on how stressful this game gets when you go about replacing your fuses. You will be spending a majority of your time staring at the cameras, especially on later nights when the characters are moving pretty quickly. So having to spend a fuck ton of time grabbing the fuse and replacing it will guarantee that you lose track of literally every character you were watching. It's so stressful, and while I'm not a huge fan of being stressed out, if you could believe that, I do still think it's really cool how this game is able to pull that off. Night 4, and again, just as Five Nights at Freddy's did, Night 4 introduces the big bad antagonist himself, Farley. And let me tell you, he's honestly probably the least threatening character this game's seen so far, with a mechanic that makes him sound a lot scarier than he really is. Let's talk about it. Farley works in the exact same way as Charlie. The goal is to make it to your right door. However, the big catch with Farley is that you can't see him on your cameras. And of course, we already know we can't see door characters at our door. So how do we know where Farley is? Well, every time that Farley moves, he will laugh, which by the way, if you were curious, is just FNAF 1 Freddy's laugh. You will have to keep track throughout the night of how many times Farley laughs, as every 5th laugh will signal that Farley is now at your right door and that you need to close it. And this is where this game introduces a mechanic so cool, yet so useless. In your office, you will now see you have a little notepad. Using this notepad, you will be able to leave little tally marks. Now, why would you need to leave little tally marks? Well, this is this game's way of letting you keep track of how many times Farley has moved so you don't have to just remember. Every time you hear him laugh, open your notepad and mark a line. Once you deal with his attack, switch to your eraser, erase it, and start again. I think this is super cute and unique. I've never seen a FNAF game do something like this before, as most would probably prefer you just remember it yourself because that's way more AIDS inducing. However, the way the rest of this game controls does bring up an issue with this otherwise awesome mechanic. I have 2 hands, in case you weren't aware, and on my 2 hands, 5 fingers are attached each. What's stopping me from counting Farley's movements on my hand? Doing this is actually a much better choice in my opinion, since it eliminates the time it would otherwise take to drop the camera, open the notebook, mark it down, close the notebook, and then reopen the camera. I think there's a very simple way to solve this problem and further encourage the player to actually use the notebook. All you would have to do is make another mechanic use a keybind. For example, instead of Whitney and the QuickTime event to get the fuse being controlled by the mouse, why not bind both of those systems to your control key? That way the player will have one hand on the mouse and the other on the keyboard most of the night, making it so that using the in-game notepad would make much more sense since you wouldn't have that open hand. I think the idea of the notepad is super nice, and while totally unnecessary, I think if it was encouraged in a more natural way, it would actually be one of the most interesting mechanics I've ever seen in one of these FNAF fan games. But as it exists right now, I just don't see any real reason to use it. Night 5 doesn't have a whole lot to talk about, really just being a much more stressful version of Night 4. On my playthrough, which by the way you can watch over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, there was a point where I had to pretty much get 2 fuses in a row because I got unlucky with attacks. Honestly, one of the most stressful moments I've ever had playing a FNAF game. It was so cool. One interesting thing I do want to talk about on this night is the lack of a phone call. Just like FNAF 1, on Night 4, the phone guy gets beamed out of existence by an enemy. On Night 5, if you check the back room, you can see what I can only assume to be the phone guy with his head on an endoskeleton body. If there's one thing about Solar, the developer of this game, she does not hold back on the shock value of her games. That's what I love so much about them. Night 6 time, here we are. Spoiler alert, there's pretty much nothing to talk about, except 2 things. To start, there's no new threat. Night 6 is just a harder version of Night 5. However, if you look in the back room, you'll notice that the corpse is now missing. And this time around, we actually get a phone call. I'm not going to explain it because I literally can't, so just take a listen. Now you might be asking, Dxtr, what the fuck was that and why did you even show it to me? Well, dear viewer, if you reverse it, you'll hear the following, which I've added captions to. For those of you wondering what any of that means, at the time of writing, I have no idea. And by the way, that inaudible line, I'm gonna need your guys' help with that. Let me know what you think it means. I even reached out to the game's creator, and even she told me that she forgot what the line said. So that's just awesome. But I'm not quite done talking about this game just yet. No, I found something interesting hidden inside of the game. On camera 9, there is a 1 in 10,000 chance for a character by the name of Midas to appear, acting as this game's Golden Freddy, even using the same laugh and hallucination sound as him. He enters your office and his jump scare plays. I'll just let you see it for yourself. So yeah, that's disturbing. As mentioned, that character's name is Midas. I have no idea who this character is supposed to be. However, I do know that we will be finding out, as Solar Neon plans on creating 6 games in the Farley series, and I'm totally looking forward to them. There are still a few more secrets I was able to uncover. In the room where you grab a new fuse box, you'll notice a stack of papers on the ground. Upon picking the papers up, you will see one of the following 3 papers. The first shows a wanted poster for a man inside of what appears to be a bunny costume. It's only a police sketch, but we can see they're wanted for murder. The second paper reads, "Bodies found in local river." In a shocking turn of events, the body of missing boy Thomas Fiver has been found under a bridge in Shantytown. According to the Utah Police Department, Thomas's body was stuffed inside a garbage bag with his head removed. The head has still not been recovered. A note addressed to the police was also found with Thomas's body, written by the guillotine killer. This has been revealed to be his third victim. The guillotine killer, possibly giving a name to the killer in the previous paper, obviously being called that name for decapitating his victims. Another kid killer. Fantastic, but what did we expect, I suppose? And victim number 3. I wonder how many there are in total. The third paper reads, 6 children now reported missing. Over the coming weeks, 6 children have vanished in Shantytown, Utah. While 2 of the missing children have no leads, it is believed that they are further victims of the infamous guillotine killer. Utah Police Chief Edward Cal has stated that they are expecting letters from the killer soon, potentially tying the 2 other children to his spree. Police are hoping to apprehend the killer soon. Well, that answers my question. 6 children this time around. Quite the hefty number, but nothing compared to my 12, but that's not important. What is important is that I lied and there's actually one other paper to be found. However, the only way you can get it is if you've been attacked by Midas. So, 1 in 10,000. Your chances aren't great, but lucky you, I'll just show you what the paper is. So it appears Midas came from another restaurant by the name of Midas's Galactic Pizza Palace. Also on this paper, you can see some possible other names for this character, being able to make out Mike, Monty, and Max. As you can tell, this is a napkin, clearly showing that this was a very early idea for a restaurant, even having multiple food ideas like burger and barbecue before settling on pizza, apparently stating that burgers are, quote, too easy to fuck up. And then of course, the sketch of Midas with his absolutely fucking massive veiny head. Disgusting, by the way. So, with the 5 other confirmed games on the way, there's still a lot to unravel this time. And you better believe I'll be here to cover it when it comes around. But as far as I'm aware, that's all Swing Shift at Farley's has to offer. Overall, I think this game is easily one of the most creative pieces of fan game work I've ever seen. Solar Neon is so open to trying new and unique things, and I love that. I'm super looking forward to the other 5 games, and I can't wait to cover them on Dxtr Black, and of course, over on this channel. Hold up, guys! As I was working on this video, the second game in the Farley series, Swing Shift at Farley's Jr., actually released. And I thought, well, why not add that game to this video as well? So instead of ending the video right here where I was about to, let's go ahead and jump into Swing Shift at Farley's Jr. So, this is kind of awkward, isn't it? I bet you were getting ready to click off the video and now we have a whole nother game to cover. Well, be grateful, I guess. Farley's Jr. starts with a very FNAF 2 style opening. We're sitting in the POV of who I can only assume to be Farley. We can look left and right and see Basil and Charlie accompanying us. Shortly after the minigame ends, we're booted to the main menu where we can see the toy animatronics. What the fuck? Like, these things literally look like the FNAF characters, but rest assured, they are not. Upon starting the game, we're greeted by a newspaper stating that this time around we aren't monitoring a restaurant, but an entire mall. Awesome. That doesn't sound like there's about to be a metric fuck ton of characters, now does it? Night 1 has a phone call that's like 5 fucking minutes long, and I'm not going to waste my time talking about it. It's your typical Night 1 bullshit, and he explains the characters we'll have to deal with. But of course, if I just let him do that, then I wouldn't really have a job, now would I? So let's start by talking about the tools at our disposal, because there are a hell of a lot more this time around. To start, let's get the obvious out of the way. We have a Farley mask that we can use. However, you may notice the 4 buttons inside of this mask. Don't worry, we'll talk about them in a bit. You can also use your camera to flash the hallway in front of you for a short period of time. However, every time you do, you'll lose 1 film reel. Throughout the cameras, you can find film reels lying around and pick them up. Also in the cameras, you can flash and hold your light on them so that you can actually see, which is very nice. You may also notice music box symbols on a good majority of the cameras. Don't worry, we will also talk about that in a bit. But that's really it in terms of mechanics that actually matter at this point in time, which means we can move on to talking about the threats this night introduces. Night 1 introduces a whopping 4 threats, already matching pretty much the entire crew of the first game, so this is about to get scary. The first ones we'll talk about are Basil Jr. and Charlie Jr., these being the toy variants of the originals. The reason I mentioned talking about both of them is because they both literally do the exact same thing, so no point in talking about them individually. If you couldn't guess because you have a brain deficiency, their goal is to make it to your office through the big hallway in front of you. Since this hallway in front of you is so dark, you won't actually be able to see them if they're there. However, there are two things you can do to verify if they are. To start, you can obviously flash the hallway with your camera and check. However, if you don't want to waste a film reel, there is another way. Characters in Farley's Jr. will not move backwards, so once they make it to the hallway camera, if you ever see them leave that camera, that guarantees they'll be in your hallway. So once you know they're in your hallway, all you have to do is put your mask on. Except, as I'm sure you could have guessed, the buttons don't work like a normal FNAF mask. Upon a character entering your office, their eyes will glow one of 4 colors. Depending on which color they are is which color you'll have to press inside of the mask. Once you do this, their eyes will switch to another color. Repeat this process until you've pressed 4 buttons and they will finally leave your office. I don't think I need to explain to you how fucking awesome this is. Solar Neon was able to take one of the most overused FNAF mechanics of all time and add a twist to it that makes it feel new. Does it make a whole lot of sense? No, not really, but it's still really fucking awesome and I love it. The next threat this night introduces is Farley Jr. He works in the exact same way as Basil and Charlie Jr., but with one very frustrating difference. Remember how in the first game Farley would hide in your blind spots? Yeah? Well, Farley Jr. does the exact same thing, except this time around, he doesn't make sound cues when he moves. So that brings up the very appropriate question, how the hell are you supposed to know where he is? Fantastic question that is. If you look at your cameras, you'll notice a large tracker button at the top. Whenever you click that tracker, it will show you which camera Farley Jr. is currently in. However, every time you use the tracker, you have to wait an entire century to be able to use it again. This is literally the only way to tell where Farley Jr. is. So you'll have to get pretty lucky with your timings of this, especially on later nights. With the juniors out of the way, we can move on to the final threat that Night 1 introduces. That being the marionette. Oh boy, I promise you this thing is way worse than you could ever imagine. Of course, this marionette uses a music box mechanic. However, the music box is located on the desk in your office, so you don't have to open your cameras to use it, which I honestly thought was great. But is there a catch? Are you retarded? Of course there's a catch. There's always a catch. The marionette can move throughout the night. The way she moves? Take a fucking guess. Exactly! At random, she'll make a sound cue signifying that she's teleported to a random camera. Another find them on the camera mechanic mixed with a music box mechanic. Fuck! All right, fine. I've liked everything Solar Neon has done so far. Maybe if I look deep inside my cold, dead heart, I can find it in me to look past this. Maybe. When the marionette moves, you'll have to find which camera she went to and toggle the music box to said camera using the music box button I mentioned earlier. So while yes, you can wind it from your office, you're still not free of the worst fucking mechanic ever thought of by man. So, that was a lot to introduce in one night, and we've still got 4 or 5 more of these to go. To discover how bad it's going to get, stick around, because I get the really funny feeling that the further we jump into this game, the further my sanity is going to split. Oh my god. I don't even know what to say. Here we are on night 2, and this night is really going to show just how fucking difficult this game is about to be. This night introduces several new threats, all of which make me want to stitch my asshole shut so that I can never shit again. Let's waste no time and start talking about them. Tonight introduces the withered characters, literally every single one of them. Well, except for one, but we'll talk about that asshole a little bit later. To start, let's talk about Withered Basil and Withered Charlie. I'm going to talk about these two together because just like their junior variants, they both fundamentally do the same thing. On night 2, you'll notice in your office you can now pull 2 gates closed on both sides of you. These gates are important for these 2 threats. Withered Basil and Charlie's goal is to get to your office through these gates. Basil will attack the left and Charlie will attack the right. Just like seemingly every other character in this game, you won't be able to see these two while they're at your doors, so you'll have to track them on the camera to be able to tell when they've disappeared to them. Once you know they're at your door, close their respective gates and wait to hear them hobble away. You know when I said their goal is to attack these doors? Well, I kind of lied because they both have one other form of attack, that being the hallway in front of you. Both characters will appear in the hallway camera. When they disappear, they will do one of two things. The first will be moving to a side camera to make their way to their gate. The other will be moving to your hallway just like the juniors do. When you know they're in your hallway, all you have to do is flash them and they'll go away. These two characters alone already add a bunch of stress to this gameplay loop, especially with them being able to attack in more than one way. But we're still not done. We have yet to talk about the final threat this night introduces, the Jailhound. Jailhound is an incredibly frustrating character, mainly because he forces you to use two means of defense against him, both draining a crucial resource and wasting a lot of time. Jailhound can only attack through your main hallway. You'll know he's there because thankfully he'll start talking to let you know that he is there. The first thing you'll need to do is flash him, using up one of your film reels. Then, and only after you flash him, must you put your mask on. If you put the mask on beforehand, he'll kill you. This is explained by the flash disorienting him enough for the mask to fool him. Pretty interesting explanation, I will admit. Once you put the mask on, he'll enter your office for a short period and leave. Unlike the juniors, you do not have to play the Simon Says minigame inside of the mask. So yeah, a metric shitload of stuff thrown on top of you on only the second night of the game. And let me give you a little spoiler. There's a lot more characters that are going to be added to this loop. And with each one, years of my life are plucked away like nose hairs. I only want to die a lot, guys, don't worry. But I'm not quite ready to move on to night 3, as during my playthrough of night 2, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, I of course died a few times trying to beat night 2 as I got used to everything. One of those times that I died, I actually got thrown into a death minigame. So let's talk about that. In this minigame, we play as a girl named Crystal. We go to the house of a man named Mr. Martinez, which, judging solely based on the color of his dialogue tech, I'm going to assume he's this game's William Afton. Crystal asks if Terrence, who I can only assume to be his son, is around, as he hasn't been answering messages. Martinez says he's been locked inside of his room after what I can only assume to be a supposed incident. Crystal apologizes about someone named Toby, and at this point, we're not totally sure who that is. Martinez allows Crystal inside to go see Terrence, but when she goes to his room, Martinez is seen pulling out a syringe and following after her, clearly showing that he's about to do something terrible. The only question we'll be left with now is why, and who is Crystal? But with that, we're ready to move on to night 3. With night 3 coming along, we have even more characters thrown onto our shoulders, and I'm really not excited for it. We have another duo group of attackers that pretty much do the exact same thing. So let's talk about them first. These two characters are Balloon Boy and JJ. Yeah, that's right. Solar made JJ an actual threat in this game rather than just the Easter egg that she is in FNAF 2. Let's talk about Balloon Boy first. He will make his way to your left gate. Of course, like every other character, you won't be able to see him in your doorway. However, you won't have to watch him on the cameras either, as every time he moves, he'll make a sound cue. And the second sound cue he makes will signal that he's at your gate, and that you either need to close it or put your mask on. Either will make him go away. JJ is identical, except she attacks the right gate instead. Now, I mentioned these two were slightly different, and what they do if they get into your office is how they're different, since neither of them will actually end your run directly. If Balloon Bitch makes it into your office, he will quickly leave, but not before taking every single film reel out of your camera, forcing you to have to go through all of the cameras to find more. And at this point in the game, you really don't have the time to be doing that. Now, if JJ gets into your office, she'll do something so foul, I'm trying to hold back the vomit from spewing out of my mouth just thinking about it. If JJ gets into your office, she'll steal your fucking mask off the table. She will then teleport to a random camera in which you'll have to fucking find her and click on her in order for her to return it to your desk. Oh my fucking god, that is literally the most evil thing I've ever seen a character in a FNAF game do.
Oh, fuck.
Oh, she took the fucking mask. I'm cooked.
I didn't know she took the mask. I thought that sound cue from JJ was her.
I thought the sound cue from JJ was her leaving.
It was not. It was her grabbing my shit. She copped me.
She copped on my shit. I'd rather JJ kill 6 more children than take my shit, I'm being honest. Oh, but guess what? We're still not done because there's still 2 more threats to talk about. I know I said 3 at the start of the night, but these 2 characters are basically 1 character, which is why I'm saying there's 2 more. These characters are Candy Cadet and Astro. The fuck me silly, backwards, forwards, upside down, flip me, bend me combo. Let me explain it. So you'll need to watch camera 10 to see when either of these two leave. It's important you know who leaves first. If Candy leaves, he will approach one of your gates at random. You of course will not be able to see him at your gate without either flashing your camera or watching the cams to see when he enters. He also makes no sound cue either, so that's great. Once he's there, you'll need to close the gate until he leaves. However, shortly after Candy Dick attacks, Astro will attack the other door shortly after. Now, you may be wondering why I mentioned how important it is for you to know who leaves camera 10 first. Well, that's because if Astro leaves first, he'll do something a bit different. If Asshole leaves first, he too will go to either of your gates. However, when he's at your gate, he'll start singing. You need to close which gate you hear him at until he leaves. And of course, when he does, Candy Dickhole will soon attack the other side. These two add so much more unnecessary stress to this game, and Solar Neon knew exactly what she was doing when she made this. Asshole. Before we move on to night 4, I want to talk about another death minigame I got while working on this night. It's literally an exact copy of the Give Cake minigame from FNAF 2. The only major difference is that we play as Farley instead of Freddy, and instead of a random crying child, we see a girl come to the entrance who in the programming is named Charlie. Soon after, a car pulls up to the building and a man in a bunny mask gets out. Now, while I would imagine this person is probably Martinez, I do have to point out that in the code, this character's name is Guillotine. And if you remember from the first game, is the name of the serial killer. So it appears we get to see the abduction before one of his many murders. But with that, we can move on to night 4. It got worse, guys. Let me tell you, it got so much worse. Way worse than I could have ever imagined. Not only does night 4 add 2 more characters, but it also adds a brand new mechanic that makes this game far more stressful than it already was. To start, let's talk about the new mechanic, being able to turn off the power to the building. I bet you can take a solid guess where this is going. When the power is off, you obviously can't check your cameras. However, you can still put your mask on and close your gates. With that in mind, now on to the 2 threats this night introduces. Let's start with the simplest one, Mangle. Mangle has 2 ways of getting into your office, the big hallway in front of you, and the vent that's on camera 9. I've neglected to mention this vent up until this point, because Mangle is the only character to interact with it. Plus, you can't even see or interact with this vent in any way regardless. When you see Mangle in your hallway in front of you, you'll have to shut the building's power off. She'll swoop into the office for a few seconds and then leave, wherein you can then turn it back on. The vent is pretty much the same, but since you can't see the vent, the way you'll know you have to shut the power off is when you hear her in your vent. Turning off the power throughout the night when watching the cameras is so integral to this game's cycle is absolutely brutal. And the final character introduced on this night doesn't help with that at all. Withered Farley is the last character introduced on night 4, and he serves to be one of the most stressful yet. Once Withered Farley makes a successful movement opportunity, he will teleport directly to your main hall. Every time you flash the hallway, you'll be able to see him. Throughout the night, he'll slowly creep his way towards your office, and once he enters, as I'm sure you could have guessed from my intro of him, you'll have to shut the building's power off until he leaves. Mazel tov! I want to die. This is every single threat in the game. And let me tell you, completing this night was honestly one of the hardest challenges I've ever put myself through. And we're not even on to night 5 yet, so I'm really not excited for all that. But there is still one thing I want to talk about before we move on to night 5, and that's another death minigame I got while playing night 4. In it, we play as an unknown character seemingly on a camping trip with another unknown character. Child number 2 wanders off and we go to follow him, only to go deeper and deeper into the forest as we lose track of him. When we find him again, we see him trapped in the back of someone's car as it drives off. Maybe got some inspiration from the FNAF movie, just a hunch. Shortly after, Farley jump scares us. And this leads to a small theory that I have. I get the feeling that for each of these minigames, depending on who jump scares us at the end of them is meant to hint at who the stolen child in said minigame would go on to possess. Just a hunch, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Anyways, on to night 5, and I'm really not excited for it, I can't lie. Thankfully, night 5 doesn't bring anything new to the table. I thank God for that every day that I wake up, because he knows better than anybody how I would have lost my mind had there been more animatronics added on this night. However, there is something very interesting to note about this night. 1, I never got a death minigame like I was hoping for, but that's fine. And 2, something very interesting happens once you complete the night. I'll let Dxtr Black take it away. Subscribe, by the way. Ooh! Oh! I need to relax. Wait, what? Mangle still kills you? What the fuck? That's right. Mangle kills you. And when reading the newspaper after the fact, we see that we've been playing as Jeremy Fitzgerald this whole time. Wowee! I'm leaking. What? But with the information of our player now being dead, who's to say what's going to happen on night 6? I'm not sure, and I'm very, very excited. Night 6 is pretty interesting, so let's just jump right into it. To start, we're now playing as Mr. Martinez, both the man who was holding the syringe in an earlier death minigame we talked about, and the man I suspect to be the guillotine killer. In our phone call, we actually get to hear the conversation between Mr. Martinez and the phone guy, and I think listening to it for yourself will be much better than me describing it to you.
Fancy seeing you there, Mr. Martinez. And on a night like tonight.
Why are you interrupting my night, Gretchen?
You tell me, Vincent. Poking around my mall, and during an active investigation, no less. God. You know, I gave you a lot of time. More than I've given most of my vendors. But no. First your hunks of metal fuck with my staff. Then those kids go missing. The cops start ripping my business up. That poor Jeremy kid gets his head smashed in by one of your freaks. The one you told me you would fix. And I now find you there, doing God knows what.
Now what is that supposed to mean?
Oh, I think you've got a pretty damn fine clue.
Are you threatening me, Gretchen? I'm not sure baseless accusations are a good look for you.
Then let me make it simple. If you're not out by the time I get there, I'll throw you out myself.
Is that right now?
Yeah, it is. Wanna know why? Because I've been in this business long enough to know what scum is. Whatever mess you've made, I want it cleaned up. Otherwise, the police might be expecting a little tip soon.
I think this further adds to my confirmation that yes, Mr. Martinez is 100% the guillotine killer and this game's Afton. This night really serves to be a much harder version of Night 5. However, to my surprise, one new character is actually added, that being Midas, the secret character from the first game. He acts in the exact same way as Golden Freddy does in FNAF 2. Occasionally, when you drop your monitor, he'll be in your office. If you don't raise your monitor again fast enough, he'll kill you, easily becoming the most frustrating character in this game in my opinion, as the crazy amount of shit going on is already hard enough to keep track of in your head, but adding this bullshit guy on top of it really serves to make my head explode. However, it did lead to my crazy completion of Night 6.
Fuck, I'm dead.
What? Holy shit! Tell me that's not the craziest completion you've ever seen. Yeah, I thought so. But with that, Farley's Jr. closes down due to a bunch of bullshit that was completely expected, and Swing Shift at Farley's Jr. comes to a close. At least, that would be the case if we didn't have a bit more lore stuff to talk about, since with Midas actually showing up, I'm sure you could have assumed there's some stuff I was able to find. To start, by going into the extras menu and checking out the characters, moving over to the withered characters, you'll actually see missing posters for each of them, adding to my theory of depending on who jump scares you equating to who the dead child possessed, with Garrett possessing Farley, Charlie Emily possessing Basil, Terrence Martinez and Crystal possessing Jailhound, and an unknown person possessing Charlie. Why is this unknown? Well, because I never actually got Charlie's death minigame. But let's go take a look at it, shall we? In this minigame, we play as Susie Rosa. We walk around town until we eventually stumble across our dog, dead in the middle of the road, clearly being hit by a car. Shortly after, a car pulls up next to us and the guillotine killer steps out, telling us that he can fix our dog if we get in the car with him. and I'm sure you can imagine what he does to her next. And speaking of minigames, there's still plenty to cover. Let's rapid fire through the minigames I never got in my playthrough over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, starting with the minigame called Riverbed. We play as an unnamed little boy in the rain. We walk past the place where Susie's dog was killed, and continuing forward, we see the guillotine killer dropping the body of presumably one of his victims in the lake before he is then attacked. And if you remember, this is probably his third victim, which was referenced in one of the papers in Farley's 1. The next minigame is called Save Them. We play as Withered Farley as we follow the marionette through the building. She spells out save them as we travel, but before we can get to the exit, the killer steps in and smashes the marionette to pieces. And finally, we have Late Night, a minigame that's really just a cutscene. We watch a mother talking on a payphone while her daughter is clearly trying to get her attention. Eventually, she wanders off, only for us to see the killer's car whiz by, presumably, I would imagine, hitting her with it, although no sound cue is heard to indicate that. The mother goes to look for her, and then we get jump scared by the marionette, which would tell me that this little girl would go on to possess her. Oh yeah, there actually is another minigame that I got, I just didn't mention it for some reason, so I'll mention it now. It's called I'm Sorry. This one is also just a cutscene, and in a much different style from the others. A boy is sitting in the hospital with Mr. Martinez. They're watching the corpse of an unknown person completely wrapped in gauze. Looking back at Martinez, we see this unsettling image. And with that, that's all of the cutscenes in this game covered. However, we're still not quite done talking about stuff I was able to find. To start, there are several newspaper articles to read just like in the first game. Each appears at random when you click the paper stack in your office. They read, Marvelous Mimic Man. The winner of the 1995 Henton's Robotic Fair has been announced to be Vincent Martinez's Marvelous Mimic Man. This robot won due to its impressive state-of-the-art AI that allows it to near perfectly mimic the actions and poses of anyone around it. Vincent Martinez, the proud creator of the Mimic Man, has made a statement on winning first place. I am honored to receive this award. Thank you to the judges and especially the voters who made this happen. I hope to show you more of the Mimic Man and other creations like him soon. Farley's closes its doors. Lawsuit from Showbiz Pizza Time Incorporated closes down beloved family restaurant. After a long and grueling trial, Showbiz Pizza Time Incorporated has won its lawsuit against New Edge Incorporated, the owners of Farley's Fun Zone. The lawsuit alleges that New Edge Incorporated not only plagiarized multiple of its characters, but also stole confidential blueprints and schematics for their animatronic mascots. As a result of New Edge losing the lawsuit, they have been ordered to pay Showbiz Pizza Incorporated $3 million in damages. While New Edge has yet to make a statement, their decision to shut all of their 10 Farley's Fun Zone locations has sent a clear message. Obituaries. Abigail Leslie Emily, September 5th, 1954 to July 30th, 1985. Abigail was born on September 5th of 1954. She grew up in a lovely house down north before moving to Utah and marrying a brilliant husband and having a lovely daughter, both of which were unfortunately taken away from her too soon. Abigail tragically killed herself on the 30th of July, 1985 via a self-inflicted gunshot to the head. We hope that Abigail is in the warm light and with her husband and daughter. So, a robot that can mimic people made by Martinez, a plagiarism lawsuit for blueprints and schematics, and a woman who tragically killed herself, each with something redacted. And of course, after getting killed by Midas, there is an additional paper you can read. Tragedy at Midas's. 10-year-old boy bitten by animatronic. This afternoon at Midas's Galactic Pizza Palace, one 10-year-old boy, Tobias Martinez, was bitten by one of the establishment's animatronic characters. It was reported that he was shoved inside its mouth by 4 children who have yet to be identified. Police have not yet confirmed if this is a murder attempt or freak accident, although they are still investigating. Tobias is reportedly in critical condition, with his frontal lobe nearly severed. The owners of Midas's New Edge Incorporated have yet to make public statement on the matter, aside from suspending all operations at the restaurant. Tobias Martinez was bitten and killed at Midas's. I wonder if this isn't the person we see in the hospital bed in the I'm Sorry minigame, as this is clearly this game's equivalent to the Fredbear bite. And since we're drawing parallels, let's draw another one. In the weird phone call all the way in Farley's 1, the first line mentions a riverbed. And what do we see in one of the death minigames? That's right, the guillotine killer throwing a body into a riverbed. Whose body this is, though? No other than Thomas Fiver, Martinez's third victim. But with that, as far as I'm aware, is everything that the first two Farley's games have to offer. I'm incredibly excited for the rest of the series that Solar has planned, and she's actually shown me a sneak peek of the third game. I'm obviously not going to spoil anything, but it looks crazy. Overall, both of the Farley's games are clearly heavily inspired by the original FNAF games, and even seem to be following the original pattern and story these games laid out. And I honestly really like it. Solar is very passionate about this project, and you better believe I'll be here to cover the rest of the games as they release. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think Swing Shift at Farley's is just too close to the original FNAF games to be memorable? Let me know in the comments below. In my Forgotten at Fredbear's video, I asked you guys which non-FNAF horror game you would like to see me cover in the future, and my favorite comment was honestly everyone that gave a suggestion. I appreciate all of your guys' input, and I do intend on making some non-FNAF content here and there in the future that I think you all will enjoy. I want you to think about the last time you've played a FNAF fan game that has introduced a mechanic you've never seen before. Maybe you think of Junior's deduction game mechanic. Maybe you think of Teelerland's upgrade system. Or maybe you dig really deep and think of One Night at Flumpty's 3 moving camera buttons. Whatever it may be, I'm sure you can agree that seeing a new mechanic is always interesting, and in my opinion is the most enjoyable part of playing FNAF games. I love exploring what people can come up with. Even if the new mechanics are frustrating, I still love them. The game we'll be covering today introduces a mechanic like nothing I've ever seen before. A game so obscure I'd never heard of it, and I'm willing to bet you've never heard of it either. The game we'll be covering today is After Hours at Cody's, a so far one-off FNAF fan game that introduces one of the most interesting game mechanics I've ever seen, while also telling one of the most gruesome and depraved stories I've ever witnessed. You're not going to want to miss what we have in store today, so let's dive into the world of After Hours at Cody's. Before each night, we get a small cutscene to show us a little bit of what we're getting into. In the Night 1 cutscene, we see a mysterious black figure cause one of the animatronics to awaken. And I'm not gonna lie, the animatronic that wakes up is a bit of a bad bitch, I'm not gonna lie to you. But with that, we do start Night 1. Night 1 obviously introduces one threat. But before we can start talking about that threat, we need to talk about the mechanic in this game that makes it so unique: the cameras. Taking a look at them, you'll notice that there's a long bar in the center of the map with one small section of it being red and a small rectangle quickly moving back and forth across it. If you haven't figured out what these cameras are about to do yet, then let me tell you. When you switch cameras, you will need to time the camera switch up with when the small moving rectangle is inside of the red bar. If you mistime it, then the camera you clicked on will load very slowly. And this is a very fast-paced game. If you time it properly, the camera will load almost instantly. This is such an interesting mechanic that I originally thought I was going to hate. But it's because of this mechanic that I've actually put After Hours at Cody's in my top 5 favorite FNAF fan games of all time. But the timing doesn't only relate to how fast your cameras load. If that was all it did, then this mechanic would be pretty lackluster overall. It also plays a much more integral role with a core mechanic of the game: the power. Your power drains pretty quickly in this game. However, there is a way to recharge it. And unlike in most FNAF games where you can recharge power, it's surprisingly not done by holding down a fucking button like a music box. Thank dick. This time around, it's also tied to the timing mechanic in the cameras. Every time you properly time a camera switch, a small battery multiplier will increase by 1 at the bottom of the camera. The higher that multiplier is, the more power will increase, with a maximum multiplier of 30. However, if you don't properly time a switch fast enough, then the multiplier will start to quickly decrease. So constantly switching cameras is a must. I think this is easily one of the most unique mechanics I've ever seen. It adds a level of skill that most other FNAF games just don't have. Most FNAF games' skill ceilings are marked by your reflexes. This one is marked by your rhythm, and I think that's awesome. But anyways, onto the threat this night introduces: Bad Bitch Bella. Or as this game calls her, Bella the Beaver. I think my name is a little bit better though, personally. Bad Bitch Bella has a very simple motive: walk to your office, put a collar on you, and walk you like a dog. You guys can feel free to defend yourself from her, which I will explain how to do in a moment, but I for one will already be on my hands and knees by the time she enters the office. She will try to enter your office through camera 5 or your right door. In camera 5, she'll have 2 stages. One where she's far away from the camera, and another where she's much closer. Once she moves to her second phase, you will have to use your camera's alarm system, which, lucky us, is also tied to the timing mechanic. When you press the alarm button, if you don't time it with the red bar, the audio will not play and you'll have to wait for your alarm to charge back up. When you use the alarm on Bad Bitch Bella, she will look at the camera. When she does, all you have to do is close your door, and eventually she will go back to the stage. If you don't use the alarm on her, she will pound on your door and drain a lot of power before leaving, and then Operation Walk You Like a Dog will be set in motion. Very easy character to explain 2 very important mechanics in this game. I think After Hours at Cody's Night 1 is a great example of properly introducing your game's core mechanics in a way that isn't confusing or overwhelming. Plus, you made the character really hot for no reason at all. This is a children's establishment. Why are the characters hot? That's something I'll never be able to wrap my head around. Now, how do we actually complete the night? Surviving until 6 a.m., Dexter? You fucking retard? Whoa. Hey now. The people in my comments don't like it when you say that word. Do better, retard. Anyways, no. Surviving until 6 a.m. is not how you complete a night in this game. After Hours at Cody's opts to use a task-based completion system. Now everyone hold your breath, because this could either make or break this game depending on how shitty the tasks are. You can exhale. It's okay. The task is mundane. However, it plays into the game's core mechanic, so it actually makes for a very satisfying gameplay loop. Remember that black figure that brought the bad bitch back to life? Well, that character is known in this game as the Anomaly. And judging by that name alone, I'm willing to bet you can guess what this guy is going to do and what the task system in this game is. The Anomaly has a random chance to appear on any of the cameras in your game at any time. If at any point you find him, you will have to use your alarm on the camera that he's on. When you do, your Anomaly counter will go up. After you find him 10 times, the night will be over. You do have to note that he will not always be on a camera, and if you don't find him fast enough when he appears, he will not stay on a camera forever and will eventually leave. Again, overall this mechanic is pretty boring, but because of how well it ties into the timing mechanic, it serves as one of the most enjoyable FNAF experiences I've ever had. But now on to night 2, except I lied because we actually have a cutscene to talk about first.
My dear friends, the worst has come to pass. As many of you may already know, my brother, Darren, has not been found since his disappearance earlier this year. He meant the world to me, as I'm sure he did to plenty of you too. His astounding creativity and infallible craftsmanship became the source of so many wonderful memories for children all across the country. These moments we shared will remain evergreen to me for as long as I live. Before I continue though, I'd like to show you this. A child at Cody's gave this to me once when I was visiting the restaurant. Wonderful, isn't it? This creativity we inspire. As it pains me to say, I do understand the suspicion people may have had toward me in the months following my brother's disappearance. But please, I urge you all to understand how these events have weighed heavy on me. He was my family too. The threats I've received since then caused me to think about my place in all this. I know I may not have been the most communicative or involved between the two of us, but I still did hold so much love for the work we did together. All this is to say that I will be stepping down as proprietor of Cody & Co. I've had a long and fulfilling career, and I only hope that the kindness I've shown will continue to reflect on the company as I look forward to finding someone new to handle the reins. But until then, I hope only to leave this company in a better state than it currently remains. If my being a part of this only serves to obstruct the joy and wonder that my brother and I wish to impart, then perhaps it is best if I step down and let the magic live on without me. Thank you for everything. I genuinely had a wonderful time.
So, we have two brothers that started this company together, and one of them tragically died. Now, I'm no FNAF expert. Okay, maybe I am a little. I think we're all smart enough to know that the pain in this guy's voice is definitely a little bit sussy. I'm not pointing any fingers here, but if it comes out that his brother is the one who killed him, I would not be surprised in the slightest. Anyways, on to night 2. By the way, if you were curious as to how this game explains the anomaly, well, the phone guy blatantly tells us that we're ghost hunting. Everyone that works in this building knows about this thing and what it can do, and we were more so hired to remove it. If I signed up for a night watch job and got told that, I would walk out of that building before the poor bastard could even hang up. Night 2 introduces one new threat, Morris, who also introduces the last major mechanic this game has to talk about, the curtain behind you. I haven't actually mentioned it so far, but yes, you can turn around in your office to find a curtain. It vaguely reminds me of the curtain from those nights at Rachel's. However, this game isn't mind-numbingly boring like that one is. Morris will slowly creep out from behind the curtains throughout the night. Occasionally, you'll have to turn around and force him back. However, unlike most curtain mechanics like this, it isn't just pulling them closed or holding your light on it. After Hours at Cody's needs to get a little bit quirky. Introducing probably the most frustrating mechanic in the entire game. Next to the curtains, you'll see 4 buttons. Each button has a color. You might be thinking, Dexter, I'm looking at them and not a single one of them has a color. Well, you see, dear viewer, that's what I thought too. However, no, they do indeed have a color. You just can't see which color each button is until you press it, which I think is very stupid. Morris has 5 phases before jump scaring you. The first phase is the phase you'll mostly see him in. All you'll be able to see is his nose. This is the furthest back that he can be, so if he looks like this, you're all good. The next 4 phases each correspond to one of those buttons. So depending on how close he is to ganking you, you will have to select the correct colored button and then flash your light on him to make him go back to phase 1. What do the buttons mixed with the flashlight have to do with sending him back? I really have no idea. And in all honesty, I think this is easily the weakest part of the entire game. But that's not where my frustration with Morris ends. No, not at all. Believe it or not, turning around in your office can be a frustrating experience for literally no reason whatsoever. How, you might be asking? Well, I'd be more than happy to explain it to you. Let's say you're facing towards your doors. Bad bitch Bella is at your door, so for now, the door is closed. While this door is closed, apparently Beth, the name of our player, gets fucking glued to the goddamn ground and is unable to move an inch. Because if either one of your doors are closed, you will be unable to turn around to check on Morris. How does this make any sense at all? It literally fucking doesn't. And that's not all. It gets even more frustrating. Let's imagine you're facing Morris. You press a button and flash your light to send him back. Now it's time to turn around and start filling up our power in the camera again. But uh-oh, fucker! You forgot to press the button you already fucking pressed. Because if any of the buttons are currently toggled on, you can't turn around. Why? Who the fuck knows? I love this game a lot, but holy shit, this is one of the most retarded things I've ever seen. It doesn't make any sense at all. Well, whatever. It's frustrating. It's stupid, but I didn't let it ruin my experience with the rest of this amazing game. Speaking of, let's move on to the post-night 2 cutscene.
Greetings, employee, and welcome to part 3 of the Warren Tech Mascot Training Module. In this chapter, we'll be demonstrating how to safely wear and operate our patented Flex mascot suit. To begin the process, locate the 4 winding ports present on each of the character's limbs. Use your company-issued War Wrench to turn counterclockwise and disengage the mascot's enhanced performance mode. You should notice the eyes glow red from the activation of the light relay. This means that the mascot is ready to be worn. Simply be warned, do not by any circumstances wear the mascot suit while it is still in its enhanced performance mode. Its specialized routines involve the full rotation and contortion of the extremities. Should you be caught in a suit during the performance of one of these routines, do not panic. If you can, tuck your legs and arms into the main torso and lower your head as far as possible.
Repeat the phrase. Abort showtime routine. Jonah protocol in effect. Abort showtime routine. Jonah protocol in effect.
So it seems we've found After Hours at Cody's spring lock equivalent. And in all honesty, I think it's way more brutal than the spring lock suit could ever be. Imagine being locked inside of that clown suit, only for the arms and legs to start twisting, breaking your bones, ripping your tendons, and contorting your bodies in ways it was never supposed to bend. This is easily one of the most terrifying ideas I've ever seen in a FNAF game before, and I'm all for it. Night 3 introduces one new threat, Jack the Jackal. He acts as this game's Chica, being a borderline exact copy of Bad Bitch Bella, except she's a 10 and he's like a 4 at best on a good day. As I'm sure you could have expected, Jack does the exact same thing as Bella, except he attacks camera 6 and your left door instead of your right. The same system and rules apply to him. He has 2 phases on camera 6. Once he's in his second phase, use the alarm on him and close the door until he leaves. Simple sugar. We've dealt with this before, however, it does add a decent deal of pressure in combination with what we already have. The cooldown for the alarm is relatively slow, and now having 3 consistent problems we need to use it on, it could easily start to get out of hand fast. Not to mention having another door character which could prevent us from turning around to check on Morris. This game can get stressful, but I honestly think that's one of the most enjoyable parts about it.
Clocking out? Okay. Have a good night then. Hey, Lonnie, mind if I talk to you about something?
Oh, of course. I was just about to finish up here. What's on your mind?
So, I've been going over the company's financial statements to help allocate the budget for next year. I noticed that some of our bank capital's been withdrawn and donated to a couple of undisclosed recipients. They've been blocked out. You wouldn't happen to know anything about this, would you? Okay, if you don't know anything about it, I'll just go ask Cynthia.
You won't get anything of value out of her. I made those withdrawals.
Alright, that's fine, but let me know next time. Given how much was spent, I don't have enough money left to fund my R&D for the new mascots next year. We need to focus on improving the restaurant before doing anything like this, okay? Anyways, who were the recipients anyway? You're joking, Lonnie. Tell me you're joking.
Quite the opposite, I'm afraid.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And after all that shit about dedicating yourself to the betterment of the company, to promise a business that would never do anything to harm its audience again, you pulled this on me?
Look, calm down. I can explain.
No, you can't explain shit. You may put up a face to get them to tolerate you, but I'll be damned if you ever gave a shit about the kids. I'm the one working my ass off out there to cover for your mistakes.
I said calm down! Don't even start with me. Your pitiful self-righteousness is pathetic. Do you not remember the hole I dug you out of? You owe every part of the success to me. I made this company, and I made you! Don't try to push superiority onto me when you're the one who crawled to me, begging for my help all those years ago. What I do with my company's funds is none of your business. Do what is asked of you before I decide you're no longer needed.
Fine, you made your point.
Glad we came to an agreement. Be seeing you.
Whatever.
So, the brother Lonnie, who we heard in the Night 1 cutscene, has been spending company money on something shady. The exact contents have been redacted, but judging from Daryl's reaction, it's not good news. We also have a pretty big argument about money here. And if we're still rolling with my theory that Lonnie had something to do with Daryl's death, money is one of the most common reasons for murder. Again, not necessarily pointing any fingers. Okay, that's a lie. Yes, I am. There's no way in fuck Lonnie isn't the reason Daryl died, but I guess only time will tell. Night 4 introduces the main attraction himself, Cody. Really shitty name, by the way. The only Cody I like is this gay guy who wears a lot of blue and has some yellow ass teeth. Anyways, onto what Cody from the game does. Cody's main goal in this game is to absolutely rail your power supply. There are 2 cameras which have breaker boxes in them. They must be female because Cody really wants to break their boxes with his big fat patty whacker double-decker robo dig. When he's in either of these cameras, he'll have 2 phases. One where he's just kind of chilling there, and the other where he's having intercourse with said breaker box. When you see him doing his thing with his big fat patty whacker double-decker robo dick, use the alarm on his camera to scare him away. If you don't, obviously your power is going to disintegrate like the cells on my testicles when I accidentally place them on the stove. So, here we have yet another character that requires us to use the alarm system. Can you start to see how this game could become stressful? Especially considering that our alarm has a pretty long cooldown time in reference to the amount of characters that require its use. Yeah, it can become a bit much at times, but in all honesty, I never felt like this game was unfair. I never felt like there was even an inkling of RNG. This game is so fun. You guys really need to check it out, or check out my full playthrough over on my second channel, Dxtr Black.
I'm done.
Just what is the meaning of this?
I can't keep covering your ass. I've just about had it. I've been trying to keep the magic alive for years at this point, but everything you've done has just thrown a wrench in every plan I've had. Every single time I was at the cusp of making something good for our audience, you've pulled the rug out from under my feet. Whatever, I know your heart was never really in it. Hell, we both know that neither of us would be here if it weren't for my mascots.
Do I need to remind you of the last time we've had this conversation?
No, because I've been thinking about what you said. Sure, you helped me out of a dark place, but I'm sure as goddamn hell you only ever did it to leech off my talent, knowing full well you couldn't produce a fraction of what we've accomplished here on your own.
Just get to the point. You're wasting my time.
I've had Cynthia pull our financial statements from the last 2 years. Don't even think about going after her when this is done, because she's made up her mind to leave long ago. I have the contacts of every news outlet in the state, ready to publish the uncensored documents at a moment's notice.
What? Are you dense? Don't you realize that this is gonna spell the end of you too?
I do. Besides, however this turns out sure as hell beats trying to steer a ship that's been sinking for years now. So I'm gonna give you 2 options. Walk away now and forsake your every stake in this company, or take the fall with me and lose everything anyway.
You belligerent, unthinking fool! You really haven't changed at all, have you? Still the over-emotional disaster of a child you've been since we were kids. God, it's no wonder Mom and Dad gave up on you so damn easily. You know what? Do your worst. You won't get anything out of me.
Then I guess you made your choice.
God damn it, Doria, get back here! This isn't something you just decide!
I've told you, my name is Daryl. Goodbye, Vonnie.
No. No, this can't be happening. Why are you making me do this?
Tisk, tisk, tisk. Well. Looky what we have here. Exactly as I suspected. Lonnie killed his brother. Sure, Daryl was gonna bring the entire company to its knees, but to be fair, it was entirely Lonnie's fault. I also want to use this cutscene to bring up a problem I have with some FNAF fan games. Voice acting can really make or break an impactful scene in a game. You really need to be able to get an actor or actress who can really bring that energy that the role needs to tell its story. Lonnie's voice acting is bad, and it really shows in this Night 4 cutscene. From the mumbling, making it hard to understand what he's saying if it wasn't for the subtitles, to the actor not really yelling during a scene where he needs to be yelling, it makes this scene, which is supposed to be impactful and shocking, just feel very awkward and uncomfortable. Not every game needs voice acting either. If you're a dev working on a FNAF game, or any game for that matter, and you just can't quite find an actor or actress that can fit your role with the vision you had in your head, I honestly think it's much better to just leave the voicing up to the player, rather than using an actor or actress that is going to make your scenes feel like they came out of Garden of Banban, a game series with notoriously horrendous voice acting. Anyways, moving on to Night 5. It introduces nothing new and just serves as a more difficult version of Night 4, so there's obviously not a whole lot to talk about here. However, what we can talk about is the post-Night 5 cutscene.
Hello? Oh, hello? Lonnie, what is this? Get me the hell out of here.
No. They can't know. God. Why are you making me do this?
Wait, what? Lonnie, what the hell are you thinking of doing?
Please. Don't make this harder than it has to be.
Lonnie, please, no. Listen, don't do this. I'm your brother!
You made me do this! They can't know. No one can know.
Please, Lonnie! I don't want to die! I don't want to die! I don't want to die!
Now, no one will know. I'm sorry, Daryl.
So, Daryl was killed via the Flex clown suit, this game's Springlocks. It's not often you see someone other than the villain in a FNAF game fall to one of these traps. I was definitely shocked when I first saw this, and you can see my reaction to it over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. Truly one of the most brutal death scenes I've ever seen come out of a FNAF game, except this time around, it didn't happen to someone we wanted it to happen to. Night 6 introduces this game's final 2 threats, and one of them is obviously the clown, Klaus, acting as this game's boss fight night. Klaus acts as every character we've seen so far, and that includes the anomaly. Klaus can attack both of your doors, can try to break your breaker boxes with his big fat patty whacker double-decker robo dick, and is the anomaly you have to find. Namely, if his eyes are glowing, that's how you know to play the alarm. Do this 10 times and the night is over. But what about Morris? It's stated in the phone call that Klaus destroyed all of the animatronics. What about a Morris mechanic? Well, Morris is replaced by this night's second new threat, Shadow Cody, who is a much faster version of Morris. If you thought you had to check on Morris a lot, you have to check on Shadow Cody a fuck ton more. This night is intense. Klaus is fast. He will be moving around your cameras, attacking you very quickly. And in addition to the incredibly aggressive Shadow Cody, it really serves to test the limits of your skills and your timings, easily being one of my favorite nights in this entire game, and being one of, if not my favorite boss fight night in any FNAF game I've ever played.
wonderful things.
Before Beth can leave the building, she's caught by Klaus and is never seen by another human being ever again. A local who goes by the name Bethany Hasters has been reported missing as of Sunday 5 a.m. Last seen at Cody & Co.'s Game and Grub, authorities have been searching the vicinity and its surrounding forest areas to deduct what could have occurred. There is no current suspicion of foul play, but a manhunt will be conducted within the week. Authorities state to have found her place of work in disarray, sparking suspicions of the suspect being inebriated or the like. In addition to this, the robot entertainers of the restaurant were found completely disassembled and damaged beyond repair. The company has yet to release a statement, but the resigning CEO has spoken with authorities and announces that the robots will be sent for repair at one of the company's sister facilities. This story is depraved, and trust me, there's a lot that goes into it. Long before the game takes place, Cody & Co.'s Game and Grub was meant to be a second chance, a reopening of a restaurant that had already failed once before, revived under the guidance of Warren Technology. On the surface, it was nothing special. A modest arcade-style diner built around animatronic mascots, struggling to stay relevant in a world that had already moved on. But beneath that fragile revival was something unstable, something unfinished, quietly embedded into the building's systems. That presence became known as the anomaly. Employees noticed it first. Small things at the beginning, strange glitches in the animatronics' behaviors, systems responding without being touched, errors appearing where none should exist. Management acknowledged it, but only as a technical problem, something to be observed, something to be measured, not something to be feared. By the time Bethany Hasters was hired as the night guard, the anomaly was already spreading. Bethany's job was simple on paper: work the overnight shift, monitor the building, and collect data on the anomaly's activity. Her first night begins on November 9th, 1997, and at first, the restaurant almost feels dormant, quiet, empty. But that stillness doesn't last long, because each night, the anomaly grows more aggressive, and it chooses its host one by one. The first animatronic to fall under its influence is Bella the Beaver. Once a friendly mascot, Bella becomes erratic, hostile, and unpredictable, her movements no longer matching her original programming. The following night, Morris the Mouse is corrupted as well, then Jack the Jackal. Each evening, another animatronic loses control, as if something is slowly rewriting them from the inside. All the while, the anomaly watches Bethany. By Thursday night, even Cody, the face of the restaurant itself, is no longer safe. His corruption marks a turning point. The anomaly has nearly overtaken the entire system. Whatever restraint once existed is gone, and by Friday, the restaurant's original code is on the brink of a total collapse. Behind all of this is Warren Technology, and more specifically, the company's founders, Daryl and Lonnie Warren. Years earlier, Daryl had been responsible for developing advanced animatronic technology, including a dangerous experimental suit known as the Flex suit. At some point, Daryl was betrayed and trapped inside that suit. Whether intentional or negligent, the result was the same. Daryl never escaped, and what remained of him became something else entirely. The anomaly. On Friday night, Lonnie Warren lies about a meeting, betrays another employee, and secretly releases what remains of Daryl from backstage confinement. By Saturday, the animatronics have been dismantled, but the threat hasn't ended. The anomaly has a body now, a form known as Klaus, and it is no longer bound to systems or code. It hunts Bethany directly. Saturday night becomes less about surviving malfunctioning machines and more about avoiding a conscious entity moving freely through the building. And if that wasn't enough, another presence emerges: Shadow Cody, a dark manifestation tied to the restaurant's collapse, appearing as an additional threat. In the end, Bethany doesn't escape. She's caught by Klaus and taken away, her fate left deliberately unclear. In the final cutscene, Daryl, still trapped within Klaus, offers her a gift, hinting that her story isn't over, and that whatever comes next will involve choice consequence, and continuation. And that's where After Hours at Cody's leaves us. A restaurant reopened too late, a company that tried to bury its mistakes, and a presence that was never just a glitch, but the remains of someone who was never allowed to leave. But that's not where After Hours at Cody's comes to a close. Not quite yet. We still have something very interesting to talk about. If you go to the custom night menu after completing the final night, you will see a small chest icon in the bottom corner. Clicking on it will bring you to a FNAF 4 styled lock box with 2 padlocks. And rest assured, we can get the keys. The first key is locked behind 520 mode. If there's anything you guys know about me, it's that I'm absolutely terrible at Five Nights at Freddy's games. But you want to hear something crazy? I was actually able to beat this max mode, and I even did it on my first try. I would usually never even give a max mode a try, and at the time of playing it, I didn't know that beating it would give me a key.
Does that let me unlock one of the boxes?
Oh my god, it did! So the fact that I played it and beat it goes to show just how much I enjoyed this game, and I really think you guys will too. But what about the second key? Well, you get it by completing this game's second max mode, 220 mode with Klaus and Shadow Cody, which yes, I also beat, and yes, I also beat on my first try. I don't think this game is necessarily very difficult by any means, but I am still very proud of myself for actually doing it. And watching me play it over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, makes me look like I'm a lot better at these types of games than I really am. After completing both max modes, we can take the keys and unlock the box to find a very menacing looking character whose eyes turn on, a teaser for what will undoubtedly be a second game, and I believe that this character we see here is Bethany. But only time will tell. One last thing I want to talk about is something you can find in the extras menu. If you scroll through the characters until you find Klaus and hover over his face, you will see what I believe to be the rotting, decompiling corpse of Daryl. Truly one of the most disturbing images I've ever seen in a FNAF game. And with that, that's all After Hours at Cody's has to offer. Overall, I think this game is easily one of the most unique, interesting, and fun FNAF games I've ever played. Right up there with how much fun I had playing Juniors. After Hours at Cody's really is a super fun experience with a gruesome, easy to follow story, and I highly recommend you give it a try. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think I'm just glazing this game because I was able to beat it? Let me know in the comments below. In my Remnants of Tubbyland video, I asked you guys what your favorite horror game from 2025 was, and my favorite answer was this one by Skeletons. They said, "No, I'm Not Human," and I totally agree. I absolutely loved that game, and you can see my full playthrough of it over on my third channel, Dxtr Gray, which a lot of people don't even know exists. As I continue to make videos talking about Five Nights at Freddy's games, as each week goes by, I grow more and more nervous that I will eventually run out of interesting games to talk about. Obviously, the next choice would be to start talking about random horror games until new FNAF titles are released. However, recently I found a FNAF fan game I have never heard of before, a game so interesting I couldn't help but get sucked right into it. The game we'll be talking about today is Night Watch at Freddy's, a FNAF fan game that pretends to be an official demo of the original Five Nights at Freddy's games, but is really hiding some incredibly dark secrets. Stick around because you're not going to want to miss out on this one. This is truly one of the most interesting FNAF games I will ever talk about on this channel. So sit back, relax, and join me today as we dive into the depraved world of Night Watch at Freddy's. Night Watch at Freddy's does not begin in the way a normal FNAF game typically begins. I've actually never seen any FNAF game start in the same way that Night Watch at Freddy's does. Upon pressing start, we're greeted to the night screen, where you can already see something interesting. You have the classic live system that was originally supposed to be in the first Five Nights at Freddy's. But let's pause for a second and back way the fuck up. Take a look at this title screen. Do you notice anything strange? Well, if you said that the creator of the game's name looks a bit weird, then you'd be correct. It says the creator's name is Scott Cawthorn, clearly an alternate version of Scott Cawthon. But that's not where it ends. Right next to the name, we can see the year 2014. Spoiler alert, this game was released in 2025. Let's cut to the chase of why I wanted to talk about this game, as clearly there's something weird going on. Night Watch at Freddy's explores an alternate timeline where the original Five Nights at Freddy's game took a significant turn from what we know them as today. Wow, I hear you say. That's a super interesting idea for a FNAF game. Tell me, who could come up with something as interesting as that? Well, the answer to that question is pretty damn cool. This game's lead director is Avocado Dreams, the same person who's responsible for Graveyard Shift at Freddy's and the remnants of Tubbyland, both of which I've covered on this channel, and you should definitely go check out those videos after this one. But for now, let's continue. Knowing that this game is supposed to be a demo for what the first official FNAF game was intended to be. Of course, since this is an alternate timeline of the official FNAF games, in this alternate universe, Scott actually did end up including the live system that was left out of the official games. And you'll notice plenty more details just like this. For example, there's actually a fake alternate version of the classic Scott Games website, Scott Productions. The team responsible for this game really went all out. This is one of the coolest experiences I've ever seen in my entire time working on FNAF stuff. Before we load into the office, we get to see a developer note talking about Night 1. Keep in mind, Night Watch at Freddy's is pretending to be a demo, so notes like these are pretty common.
Welcome to Night Watch at Freddy's, or at least the prototype of it. Some things are still subject to change. For right now though, you can play through what's done of the game and get a feel for how it's going to end up.
Night 1 begins, and we of course get a phone call from this game's phone guy. He gives the basic Night 1 spiel that we're all used to. However, he does mention how the breaker and power systems work. Of course, that's my job, so I'm going to be doing that instead. A few things you'll immediately notice about this game. The first, and in my opinion, biggest outlier is how the doors behave. You'll notice that they're already closed from the beginning of the night. You can open the doors and flash the hallways, and doing so increases your usage. Your light especially, but we'll talk about that more once we get into the characters. Moving on to your cameras, you'll notice another scrapped feature from the official games is present here, that being the original camera buttons, where they were originally intended to be circles that would project the direction they were actually facing in the building. Such a super small, cool detail, but if there's anything Avocado Dreams is good at, it's attention to detail. Only one animatronic is introduced on Night 1, that character being Bonnie. Of course, this is an alternative FNAF 1 after all, so keeping the overall order of the character introduction does make sense. Bonnie, as I'm sure you could have guessed, is pretty simple to deal with overall. Bonnie's goal is to get to your left door, exactly how he does in the original. However, the way you deal with him is different, and he also introduces a new mechanic in the form of points into the game. Once Bonnie reaches your left hallway, staring at him on the cameras will stall him. This will become integral once we start talking about another character that gets introduced. While you're stalling Bonnie, you will get 5 points around every 0.5 seconds. So the longer you watch him, the longer he doesn't move, and the more points you obtain. Something additional to note are your lives. If you are to lose all of them, you don't have to start all the way back on Night 1. Instead, your points will just get reset to 0. On top of that, after every completed night, you will gain 1 life. Anyways, back to talking about Bonnie. Once Bonnie reaches your door, you have to open it and hold your light on him until he goes away, which will happen pretty quickly, thankfully, because as I've said before, the lights will absolutely ramp up your breaker stress. Once Bonnie leaves, you'll want to close the door again. Oh my god, oh my fucking god, oh my fucking god, it runs. My chest, dude. Oh my god, don't do that ever again. Dang. No thanks. This mechanic does bring up an interesting and pretty scary point. The doors are closed by default, and if you don't open the door and flash Bonnie when he is there, he will jump scare you. So that brings up the terrifying realization. Bonnie is strong enough to open the door if he really wanted to. Put yourself in the shoes of the Night God for a second. If that doesn't scare the absolute piss and shit out of you, I don't know what will. But aside from that, that's all Bonnie does. Something additional I do want to point out about Bonnie is how fucked up and gross he looks. Why are his ears down like that? Tell me that's not disgusting. Dogs put their ears down when they know they did something bad, and cats put their ears down when they're about to do something bad. So what the hell does a bunny with its ears down mean? That I'm about to get back shots? Probably, and I don't want that.
Nice job getting past the first night. Still wondering what I should do with that raccoon. If anyone has any ideas, please let me know.
Night 2's phone call just explains one of the new characters. Additionally, Phone guy says he's going to drop the script the company wants him to read and instead just tell some stories during the phone calls, which he doesn't end up doing this time around. However, towards the end of the call, his dog runs into a fucking door like a moron, and then he ends the call to go take it for a walk. I think that's supposed to be a hint for one of the characters this night introduces, because I have no idea what else that could be. Like the official FNAF 1, Night 2 introduces 2 new threats, Foxy and Chica. Let's go over Chica first, since she's pretty much just Bonnie with a small difference. She will do the same thing that Bonnie does, except she'll go to the right door instead. Same thing goes. Staring at her in the right hall will stall her, and while you stall her, you'll gain points. However, the difference with Chica is how you deal with her once she reaches your door. You still have to open it, but instead of holding the light on her, you have to flash your light at her. Now, come in real close and let me give you a little tip about clicking on things in almost any Click Team Fusion game. The way Click Team seems to register clicks can be delayed depending on your mouse position. I actually first noticed this during my playthrough of Tyke & Sons Lumber Co. a few months ago. If you keep your mouse stationary and click on something really fast, Click Team will not register every click you make. However, if you click, move your mouse slightly really fast, and then click again, then it will register every click. This is exactly how you can get Chica to go away really fast. If you jitter click your mouse and whip around the cursor in a small enough area over the lever, you will flash the light really fast, making Chica leave faster. Fun fact, you can also use this clicking method to ring the bell on your desk really fast and make your grandma's tinnitus act up. But you didn't hear that from me. The other character this night introduces is Foxy, who for some reason is gender swapped in this game. Not really sure on that decision. Maybe Foxy was going to be a girl in the official games, but Scott changed it, and this game is drawing from that. Or who knows, maybe Avocado Dreams just wanted a female Foxy. Either way, it's not really important. Foxy almost works the same way she does in the original. She still has multiple phases she will go through before charging at your office. However, I'm unsure if being on the camera stalls her this time around. After she gets to her final phase and disappears to charge at your office, you'll have to check Pirate's Cove and look at her sign to see which door she's charging at, since yes, she can attack both. Once you know which door she's going to attack, all you have to do is open that door and wait for her to arrive. She'll lean in and yell at you before running back to her cove. From there, you can just close the door and easy peasy lemon dick, she's been dealt with.
Keeping this one short since I haven't really been feeling the best lately. The more I work on this project, the more I feel like it's not aligning with what I've learned over the years. The overall themes are just... I guess it's just something I'll have to get used to. Hopefully it won't impact development too much. Also, I keep getting questions on how to deal with the Golden Freddy. The statue in the entrance doesn't move. There's not even any coding for it to move. I don't understand what you all are talking about.
Night 3's phone call is an interesting one. It begins with the phone guy telling us about his dog running into the door. Idiot ass dog. Cats are way better anyways. He starts talking about the new character, a puppet, and about how it really creeps him out. You can tell by the sound in his voice that he really doesn't like this thing.
It freaks me out.
He explains how to deal with it and abruptly ends the call by yelling at us to not let it out of our sight. So, as I'm sure you could have guessed, the new threat on this night is the puppet, which I'm sure you already knew was not in the original FNAF 1. So, how is this character going to work? Well, it's probably one of the most nerve-wracking, stressful, and anxiety-inducing characters in the entire game. Occasionally, you will hear a sound cue, one that I can't really describe with words. It's really weird. Anyways, when you hear it, the puppet will appear on one of 4 cameras at the bottom of the map at random. It will either be in the bathroom, the show stage, the party room, or the kitchen. You will have to find which 4 of these cameras it's on and hold the stop button like a music box to make it go away. If you don't do this in time, the puppet is going to plow on that pussy. Jesus Christ, what is wrong with me, bro? Oh my God. Put me in a fucking cage, dude. Overall, it doesn't add anything too crazy to the mix so far. Your strategy at this point should be watching Foxy and the 2 halls, staring at Bonnie or Chica to desync the 2 from attacking at the same time, and whenever you hear the sound cue, go deal with the puppet. Overall, not too bad, but night 4 is when things really start to ramp up.
this is getting a bit crazy. I thought adding more depth would increase the replayability, but it's honestly overwhelming. Maybe I'll just change it so Freddy only appears during the power outage, but that might be a bit lame. Time will tell, I guess. I'm worried that having so many different things to do might be too much. Also, added the ability to ring the bell on the desk. Thank Lane for that idea.
Night 4's phone call gets pretty serious. The phone guy explains that the animatronics are not acting right at all, going places they shouldn't be going, snapping their jaws shut, which they shouldn't even be programmed to do. He mentions Freddy specifically, and how one time before showtime, they found him in the garage of the building, staring at the main power breaker. So yeah, that sounds like bad news bears. Get it? Bears? Like Freddy because he's yeah, you get it. Night 4 introduces this game's final threat. Obviously, it's Freddy. And Freddy ties this game's loop together by single-handedly being the most stressful character in the entire game and making every other character feel 10 times more stressful than they already were. Just like the puppet, Freddy will occasionally laugh. When he does, that signifies that he has moved cameras. Freddy can move between only 5 cameras, and getting to your office is not a concern of his. When he moves off the show stage, he will either go to the bathrooms, the party room, the back room, or the kitchen. If at any point you hear him move and you can't find him on any 4 of those cameras, then that means he's moved to the garage. The garage camera, of course, has no video feed. So the only way to know for sure if Freddy is in there is by checking the 4 other possible cameras he can be in. When you know he's in the garage, you will be able to use the garage's camera scanner. The scanner will then shock the absolute living shit out of him and make him piss off. If you don't shock him fast enough, he will punch the shit out of your breaker and you will completely lose power. So there you go. There is every single character at the same time. Can you see how stressful this could be? Having to constantly watch Foxy, having to balance stalling Bonnie and Chica, balancing your power usage and your camera usage and the power aids that will happen when you use your lights, and on top of that, having 2 characters that will require you to, at random, play a stupid fucking find them on the camera mechanic game. While having one of those bullshit characters also mixing in a small music box mechanic at the same time. Does that sound a little bit overwhelming? If you said yes, that's because it kind of is. But in all honesty, I love this gameplay loop. Sure, I'm not a fan of the find them on the camera mechanics at all, but somehow this game manages to make every single action you do feel satisfying. It's really hard to put into words, and I would highly recommend you check this game out for yourself, or ideally watch my full playthrough over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. Link in the description.
Nothing really to mention here. I'm just so unsure of everything revolving around this project right now. The ideas are definitely there. I'm proud of the models, the atmosphere's in place, but something still feels so off. I'm really unsure if people will enjoy this, especially with how grim the story is. When I explained the story to my mom, she went pale and just asked me, "What are you thinking?" Just a few weeks ago, I'd have had the answer. Now I'm not so sure. Is this really something anyone would want? Would a story like this really be part of his plan for me? I don't know. I guess it just really goes to show I'm out of my depth completely. There's one more thing I want to try. There's only one way to find out if I'll be satisfied with it though.
Night 5 introduces nothing new, just being a harder version of Night 4. But it's clear from the developer notes that the dev is really starting to doubt themselves. And trust me, the phone guy is having a mental breakdown as well.
Hey, glad to hear that you're alright. I was worried since, you see, there's sort of something I've been wanting to tell you, and it's kinda... Okay, no, I can't do this anymore, dude. Everything's gone wrong, and I think I know why. On your first night, I told you about a birthday party that went bad way back, yeah? I was keeping quiet on the details. It's a sensitive subject around here, but during the party, the animatronics started going crazy. Kind of like they've been recently, and before anyone knew what happened, the power went out. Kids were screaming, parents were running around, and we were doing everything we could to get the lights back on. But by the time we did, the birthday boy was gone. We couldn't find him anywhere, and no power meant no cameras, so we didn't have any leads. Not until our night guard didn't clock in for his shift. He hadn't missed a single shift before then, and he would have known exactly how the camera systems worked, so people filled in the blanks. Started a manhunt. Management tried to forget the whole thing, but the town sure didn't. And now it's looking like it's only gonna get worse. I swear I'm seeing things that aren't there, hearing sounds in the walls, and that puppet thing keeps vanishing. I don't know why the animatronics are moving, but all of this, there's only one explanation I could think of. That kid's still here, like his ghost or something. I think it's responsible for everything that's happened since then. And deep down, maybe you're thinking the same thing. That's the only reason I can think of for why you keep coming back. Maybe you know something I don't, but here's the facts, man. This place isn't safe anymore. I'm taking my last paycheck and getting out of here. I'd suggest you do the same, but it seems you're pretty dead set on whatever it is you're trying to do. But I'm sorry I wasn't completely honest with you. No one else believed me, and look, I can't do much to make it up to you, but I know this place that serves some good drinks, and the food's pretty great. Had no animatronics either. Just, give me a call tomorrow if you're up for it. My treatment. It's the least I could do. Good luck.
After completing night 5, we get our paycheck as usual. But of course, if you've ever seen any FNAF game in your entire life before, then you'd know we're not quite done yet. Going back to the title screen, we'll see we've unlocked the overtime night. And surprisingly, it is not just a harder version of night 5. Overtime night starts with a phone call, not from the phone guy we've been hearing so far. If you remember, he said he was quitting, and exactly that he did. The phone call we get tonight is from a woman, talking about how employees have been spreading rumors about the animatronics and monsters, all of which we know is true. She says that all the employees who have been spreading these rumors will be docked pay, which I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure that's illegal. And with that, overtime night begins. Let's just start by getting one thing out of the way. This night is stressful. However, it's really fun. The entire game is really fun. When I first heard this game was made by Avocado Dreams, I was really scared it was going to be incredibly fucking hard like Graveyard Shift and Remnants of Tubbyland. But to my surprise, while yes, this game definitely isn't easy, there is very little RNG that is overwhelming, and I was actually able to complete this night. Overtime night introduces one final threat, which this game calls Jailbird. Jailbird is not at all a hard threat to deal with. I feel like she serves more as a nuisance character that you need to spend time on more than a threat that will actually get you killed. Editor, don't you dare think about playing the clip where I died to her. You know full well I died there because I didn't fully understand how she worked yet. Don't even start with me, Buster. You're on thin ice, bitch! Oh! Oh! What the fuck was that thing? Whoa, whoa, what the hell was that thing? Jailbird will wander around your cameras in an attempt to get to your garage. When she gets to the garage, she'll start to open the garage's door. When it opens, she will, for some reason, be at the front door to your office, which up until this point has never been used. If you take a look at the map, I'm not entirely sure how her opening up the garage door makes her end up here. That doesn't make much sense to me, and is why I didn't fully understand her at first. Editor, piece of shit! When you know she's behind that door, you will have to quickly spam open and close your camera. This will make her slowly emerge from behind the door and eventually leave your office. How does this make sense whatsoever? I have no idea. Don't question it. Boss character, hooray, hooray, weird shit! This night is very fast-paced, but because of the way all of the mechanics in this game work together, it serves to be an incredibly satisfying and enjoyable night overall. The difficulty is definitely high, but it is in no way overwhelming like some of Avocado Dreams' other games, which I, as someone who is dog shit at FNAF games, can really appreciate. Of course, you also have your custom night, but on top of that, after beating overtime, you get access to aggressive mode, an optional setting you can use to play through the entire game again with all of the characters having movement opportunities more often. I for obvious reasons, did not try to complete this mode. However, I know there are some people crazy enough to complete it, and I congratulate all of you who were able to, because watching playthroughs of aggressive mode is actually insane. And of course, it wouldn't be a FNAF game without some secrets and Easter eggs, so we might as well cover those as well, right? The first Easter egg is a Golden Freddy Easter egg. I'm not totally sure how it's pulled off, but just taking a look at the video I found, it seems like you need to flip your camera up and down a few times, then sit on the show stage camera. Golden Freddy should start reciting a Bible verse. Interestingly enough, the Bible verse he's saying is about Hebrews who created a golden calf to worship right before they were freed by God. Exodus 32:31. Afterwards, when you pull the camera down, you'll get this jump scare. In one of the earlier dev notes, the developer mentions a raccoon character that they didn't know what to do with. So during my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, I thought the final character in the overtime night was going to be this raccoon, but obviously I was wrong. However, there is a chance you can find these renders of him throughout the game. But as far as I'm aware, that's all Night Watch at Freddy's has to offer. I'm pretty confident that we will be getting more games in this series, since it seems the developers' dive into turmoil is only just beginning. And you better believe I'll be around when and if those sequels or prequels come out. Overall, I think Night Watch at Freddy's has become my favorite Avocado Dreams fan project. And no, that's not just because it was the only one I've been able to beat. I think the idea for the story is incredibly unique. The character designs are great, the game mechanics are literally amazing, and every character works together so well. And of course, it doesn't rely too much on RNG. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think this is easily the worst fan game Avocado Dreams has ever worked on? Let me know in the comments below. In my FNAF 2 Reimagined video, I asked you guys what official FNAF game you'd want to see reimagined next, and my favorite answer was everybody who said FNAF 3. FNAF 3 is easily my least favorite official Click Team FNAF game, and I would want nothing more than to see it remade and have it be amazing. Subscribe to the channel, I'd appreciate it a lot. Thank you to all of my superfan channel members. You guys drink nothing but Riz juice. I've been Dxtr, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya!